Chapter 1441. At noon on Wednesday, Tang Xiao suddenly found Shi Nian's class and waited for her outside. He even called a female classmate in to call her out. At that time, Shi Nian was about to go to the school cafeteria with Zhao Xiaoqing to eat beef noodles. It was mainly because she had never eaten in the cafeteria before. Xiaoqing said it was delicious, so Shi Nian wanted to go with her to try it. In the end, when she heard that someone was looking for her and that it was a boy from grade 12, class 2, she knew who it was without guessing. After all, Tang Xiao had called her a few times. First, she had hung up on him. Later, she had blacklisted his phone number. Then do you still want to go to the cafeteria with me? Zhao Xiaoqing asked softly from behind. It's almost 12 o'clock. Go eat first. I'll go with you tomorrow. Then do you want me to bring you some other food? No need, no need. I'll think of a way to settle it myself later. Shi Nian blinked at her and waved her hand with a smile. After Zhao Xiaoqing left, Shi Nian turned on her phone to take a look. Indeed, Tang Xiao had sent her a few messages on someone's phone, saying that he wanted to see her. He had sent one more than an hour ago, and another a few minutes ago. She turned to look at Enchanting, who was about to go out for lunch. She suddenly raised her hand and tugged at the cuff of his school uniform. Usually, Enchanting did not wear his school uniform all day. He usually wore t-shirts, and occasionally, he would wear an especially clean white shirt. He had to wear his school uniform every Monday and Wednesday, as well as some public classes. This morning, there was an activity in grade 12, so everyone was dressed neatly in school uniforms. Of course, Enchanting was no exception. Suddenly, she tugged at him. Enchanting turned back to look at her and saw that she was still holding on to his cuff. He glanced at her coldly. Let go. Well, we've been desk mates for several days. Can you do me a favor? Shi Nian looked at him pleadingly. In fact, she didn't have to use such a stupid method, but she really wanted to test if this method was feasible. What if Almighty Qin also hated scumbags? What if he agreed? Enchanting glanced at her again and said again, let go. Seeing that he was not even prepared to let her speak, Shi Nian paused and could only let go. With his sleeves freed, Enchanting turned to walk out. Just as he reached the class door, he saw a boy with his school uniform tied around his waist sticking his head out. When he saw someone else coming out, he asked, Is Shi Nian still in your class? Yes, she hasn't left yet. Tang Xiao nodded. It seemed like she was still planning to hide from him. She didn't come out or reply to his messages. It was already so late. How could she not come out for lunch? Ah, you're Tang Xiao from class 2, right? Weren't you? Oh right, I heard that your previous girlfriend was Shi Nian, right? It's so strange. Why didn't she get promoted to your class 2? Instead, she came to our class 6. Did the teacher deliberately break them up? A gossipy female student saw Tang Xiao outside the door and asked curiously. Tang Xiao quickly returned a sunny smile and brushed it off. He did not answer directly and continued guarding the door. At this moment, he saw Enchanting standing at the door. The moment their eyes met, the smile on Tang Xiao's face gradually disappeared. He had not forgotten the few points that Enchanting had deducted from him during the school ethics evaluation last semester. Enchanting was the first in the school year. Although he didn't usually care much, the school had long handed many important tasks to him. He didn't care, but when there was really evaluation and deduction of points, he would take the time to look at the forms and lists. With a few circles and crosses, he could almost decide a student's score for the next semester for the school. Just because he had drunk some energy drinks during the 5,000-meter run last semester, which was not considered a stimulant, Qin Siding had recorded it and deducted his points. The principal had criticized him by name. Tang Xiao would never forget this matter until he graduated. When Qin Siding walked past, Tang Xiao only glanced at him. There was no longer a smile on his face. Qin Siding, on the other hand, walked out without looking sideways. He didn't know if he had heard the conversation just now, but he definitely didn't take him seriously. When Shi Nianj walked out, Tang Xiao was about to think of a way to go in to look for her, but the school rules said that she wasn't in his class. If he barged in without a proper reason, he would definitely be given a demerit. When he suddenly saw her come out, he quickly took a step forward and reached out to grab her wrist. Nian Nian. The corner of Shi Nianj's eyes twitched. She pulled her hand out without a trace and glanced at him. Why are you waiting for me here? I've been looking for you for so many days, and you've blacklisted me. You didn't pick up any other calls. I could only wait for you here, Tang Xiao said as he reached out to pull her, but she dodged. Seeing that she wanted to keep a distance from him, Tang Xiao could only put down his hand. His expression was somewhat innocent. I can explain to you what happened a few days ago. At that time, Su Yiqi fainted in class. She was sitting next to me. As a man, I couldn't just sit back and do nothing when I saw a woman fainting, right? I subconsciously picked her up, but I promise I only sent her to the infirmary. I didn't do anything else. Shi Nianj glanced at him, smiled, and did not speak. At this moment, two girls passed by in the corridor. When they saw Tang Xiao, they quickly raised their hands to greet him. Tang Xiao, during Su Yiqi's birthday during the summer vacation, the song Deep Embrace you sang with her in the KTV was really nice. When will you have the chance to sing something else? Why didn't you sign up to sing when the school organized the program? It was clearly very nice. Tang Xiao's expression immediately changed. He turned back and glared at them. The two girls looked at him in confusion. When they saw Shi Nianj standing by his side, they immediately replied with an "oh." As though they knew some unspeakable secret, they dragged out their voices and quickly left. Tang Xiao turned back with an ugly expression. He saw that Shi Nianj was still looking at him with her head tilted and a faint smile, as though she did not take this seriously at all. Nian Nian, really, you have to give me a chance to explain. Nian Nian, really, you have to give me a chance to explain. I've been classmates with Su Yiqi for so long. If I liked her, we would have been together a long time ago. Last summer, it was her birthday, and one of my classmates had a crush on her, but he was too embarrassed to go alone, so he asked me to go with him. That night, I drank a little too much, and when I said I wanted to sing, they pushed me up to sing. I don't know much, and I only know one song that my parents used to sing. I sang it then, and I didn't even notice who was singing with me. Really, you have to believe me. Chapter 1442. It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. What's important is that we've already broken up. I didn't quarrel with you or blame you. I just feel that we're not suitable. Is there a problem with breaking up peacefully? Shi Nianj looked at him indifferently. But I don't want to break up. I'm wronged. Tang Xiao anxiously raised his hand to touch the back of his neck. I really like you. That day in the infirmary, it was the doctor-teacher who asked me to help support her. That's why I didn't have time to call you to make things clear. You can't break up with me because of this misunderstanding. It's not fair to me. Tang Xiao, for the sake of our two families, let's be rational. We'll part on good terms. It's best not to make things too awkward. If we break up, so be it. I don't want too much nonsense and entanglement. Shi Nianj said softly, but if you say it's not fair, then when someone filmed you singing a love song with another girl and posted it on the school forum, everyone said that I relied on the Sure family's wealth to let you be with me. In fact, the two of you are a couple. I'm just an interloper. Is this fair to me? Also, you've been playing football the entire summer vacation. I didn't look for you much. It wasn't easy for us to meet again. On the first day of our date, you carried another girl to the infirmary. You didn't even explain to me patiently on the phone. I waited for you on the field for the entire afternoon. You took care of someone else in the infirmary. Is this fair to me? Tang Xiao looked like he wanted to cry, but he couldn't. He just felt that her attitude and expression explained everything, as though no matter how he explained, it was useless. I didn't make any principled mistakes, did I? Otherwise, don't break up with me. You can just ignore me for the time being. You can watch my performance. When you forgive me, you can reconcile with me. Tang Xiao, you're in your 3rd year of high school. You're an adult, right? I'll be an adult next year. I'm not a child. Why are you playing childish games? After speaking, Shi Nianj was about to leave. Tang Xiao quickly went forward to pull her in another direction. Shi Nianj staggered and almost bumped into him. She restrained her expression and raised her head to look at him. What are you doing? It's lunch break now. I'll take you to lunch. Let's talk while we eat. Tang Xiao held her hand and refused to let go as they walked towards the stairs on the other side. Shi Nianj couldn't shake him off, and she couldn't make a scene in the corridor. Her expression wasn't good as she lowered her voice and said, "Let go, Tang Xiao, let go. If you go back like this, I'll tell my family that you're pestering me. You know that the reason we met is because our parents have business cooperation. You don't want anything to go wrong, do you? If you're sensible enough, then let go of me. We'll go our separate ways in the future and be ordinary friends. At least no one will feel awkward. But I like you. I haven't fallen in love with anyone else. What right do you have to break up with me just like that?" Tang Xiao suddenly stopped and turned around to roar at her. His roar was full of energy, as though he had suffered a huge grievance. Shi Nianj was suddenly speechless. She didn't feel that she was wrong, but could his roar erase his central air conditioning attribute? At this moment, a figure suddenly walked up the stairs. He was tall and thin, and had the unique handsomeness of a young man. He had already taken off his school uniform and was wearing a white t-shirt. He was holding a bottle of mineral water in his hand. When she suddenly saw Qin Sighting walking up the stairs, Shi Nianj felt her head swell. There were stairs on both sides of the corridor. There were more people on the right side, and it was quieter on the left side. Qin Sighting usually walked on the quiet side, but he didn't expect to be seen here. Furthermore, it hadn't even been 20 minutes since he left the class. They had already broken up. She suddenly fell in love with a male god and secretly wanted to treat him well. As long as Qin Sighting's brain was fine, he would definitely be able to tell that she liked him. Regardless of whether he cared or not, he would definitely be able to tell. Now that he suddenly saw her and her ex-boyfriend entangled here, who knew what kind of impression she would leave in his heart? In the past, Shi Nianj was a very unscrupulous person. She never cared about other people's gazes or private discussions. This was the first time she was so afraid of being painted with a strange code name in someone else's heart. She quickly pulled her hand out. Tang Xiao also saw Qin Sighting. The two of them were clearly about 1.8 meters tall when they stood together, and their family backgrounds were not bad. However, when he saw Qin Sighting, he instinctively cowered. Perhaps it was because of the trauma caused by the few points he had personally deducted last semester. At this moment, Tang Xiao did not dare to hold Shi Nianj's hand again. He only looked at her and used his eyes to beg her to go out to eat with him. At the same time, she gave him a chance to explain and perform. Nianj was not in a good mood. Nianj was not in a good mood. After all, he had seen what had happened earlier. When she saw that Qin Sighting had already walked up and brushed past her, she was too embarrassed to call him. Originally, she wanted him to help her get Tang Xiao away. After all, Almighty Qin still had the right to speak in the third year of high school. In the end, he didn't even give her a chance to speak before rejecting her. Now, she couldn't open her mouth. She could only wait for him to leave before explaining everything to Tang Xiao. The tall and thin boy walked past just like that. There seemed to be the smell of mint on his body. Tang Xiao looked at Qin Sighting warily. Seeing that he had already taken a few steps with his back facing him, he looked at Nianj and said, "What do you want to eat? It's already so late. You should be hungry, right? You have to eat every meal on time. If you miss a meal, your stomach will hurt. Don't be angry with me. Let's go eat first. A stomach ache is better than nausea." Nianj did not have a good temper to deal with him. She was indeed worried that her stomach would hurt. She picked up her phone and was about to call Zhao Xiaoqing to ask her to pack a lunchbox for her. All of a sudden, a cold voice came from behind. "Didn't you say that you don't know the last question of the physics paper? Come here." The voice was Qin Sighting's. It was still cold and indifferent, but Nianj was momentarily stunned by his sudden words. When she saw Tang Xiao's stunned expression, she turned her eyes and saw Qin Sighting standing there. He was tall and handsome, looking at her indifferently. Nianj instantly reacted and quickly walked toward him, leaving the central air conditioner student Tang Xiao standing there with his mouth agape, but he did not say a word for a long time. She stepped forward and stood by Qin Sighting's side. She couldn't believe that he would actually help her out. Qin Sighting only glanced at her. He was too stingy to look at Tang Xiao as he walked toward the classroom. Nianj quickly followed obediently. Chapter 1443. When she entered the classroom, Nianj was still beaming with joy. When Qin Sighting sat down, she followed. When she sat down, she whispered, "Thank you." Qin Sighting glanced at her expressionlessly. He retracted his gaze and said calmly, "You don't want to solve the last question of the physics paper? Ah, do you want to solve it now? It's still lunch break." Before she could finish speaking, she saw that he was about to stand up. She subconsciously took out the paper from the desk. "Solve. Solve. Solve it now." She had indeed asked about the physics paper in the morning, but at that time, he had ignored her. Earlier, he could have taken a detour and ignored her. He could have used such a reasonable reason to help her out. If he said he didn't do it on purpose, she wouldn't believe him. However, Qin Sighting clearly had no intention of explaining. He stood up and went to the podium in front of him to take a paper that was the same as the one in her hand. He sat back down and wrote the last question in front of her. He then glanced at her. "Do you understand?" His train of thought to solve the problem was not simple at all, but if she had looked at it seriously from the beginning, she might have understood. However, from the moment he sat down again and leaned his head slightly toward her while writing the question, her mind was filled with his clean and soft short hair, as well as the cold fragrance of mint that belonged to him. There was also the man's clean and fair skin, and his beautiful and well-defined fingers that held the pen. Her mind was filled with questions. Why was he so good-looking? How could he be so good-looking? Qin Sighting looked at her and saw that she clearly didn't understand. Her face was slightly red, as though he didn't need her to speak to know what she was thinking when he was solving the question. He put down the pen coldly. I've read it carefully, but I don't understand it very well. Can you help me explain it verbally?" Seeing that he was angry, Nianj quickly said with a strong desire to live. However, Enchanting clearly lost his patience. Seeing that she was being pestered, it was already rare for him to make an exception and meddle in other people's business. Now, he had to make an exception and really help her solve the question. In the end, she was still sitting by the side thinking about it. His brain must have been electrocuted to do such a stupid thing. Really, as long as you tell me verbally, I will definitely understand. Nianj was afraid that he would really be angry. After so long, she had finally built up a little friendship between desk mates. She did not want it to disappear in the blink of an eye. She reached out to pull his sleeve, but she remembered that he seemed to hate others touching him. Her hand stopped in midair. She did not know whether to touch him or not. Her expression was anxious and regretful. Enchanting glanced at her and said expressionlessly, "Solve it yourself first. I want to see where the loopholes and mistakes are." Okay. Her idol took a step back. Of course, she followed suit and answered the question seriously. This big question was really difficult for Nianj, who had skipped a grade. Her train of thought was wrong. After reading it, Enchanting helped her sort out the wrong direction in her train of thought. He then casually circled a few pages in the physics book that she needed to review. When she finally understood this question, there were only 15 minutes left before the end of the lunch break. "You only went out for a while before coming back. Didn't you eat lunch?" Nianj asked as she put away the papers. However, boys did not eat slowly like them. It was not strange for them to finish eating in 10 to 20 minutes. Enchanting did not answer. He glanced at her again. "Did you eat?" "No." She felt that her stomach was starting to hurt. But now, even if she wanted to take this opportunity to treat him to a meal, it seemed like there was no time. It was impossible for a top student to skip class and go out to eat with her. Just as she was thinking hard, Zhao Xiaoqing came in with 2 steaming buns in her hands. As she walked, she said, Nian, I knew you definitely didn't eat. I specially bought buns from the cafeteria." As Zhao Xiaoqing spoke, she quickly placed the buns on Nianj's desk. Nianj was almost grateful to Zhao Xiaoqing. She gratefully picked up the meat bun and began to nibble on it. As she nibbled, she mumbled, "Xiaoqing, I will never forget your kindness. Don't forget it. Don't hurt just because you have a stomachache." After speaking, Xiaoqing returned to her seat. Later, she recalled something and took out a bottle of orange juice from her pocket. "Do you want to drink this?" Nianj nodded and then shook her head. "It's fine. I'll just eat the buns. Drink it yourself." As class was about to start, she ate quickly. She had something in her mouth and could not speak clearly. When she turned back, she met Enchanting's disdainful gaze. He also seemed to dislike the smell of buns on her body. He still couldn't be bothered to look at her. His expression was cold and distant, but after all, he had just taught her how to solve the problem. She silently tilted the scales in her heart in the direction of warmth. Although he had a bad temper, he was actually quite warm inside. Seeing the obvious disdain on his cold expression, Nianj coughed. Nianj quickly finished the remaining half of the bun in a few bites. Thankfully, the bun was not big. Otherwise, with her appetite, she might not be able to finish 2 buns. It was probably because her male god was right by her side that she really didn't want to appear wasteful. However, even if it was 2 small buns, she ate them in a hurry and in the end, she was really stuffed. That afternoon, Nianj did not feel so hungry that her stomach hurt. She was so full that her stomach hurt. Thankfully, the pain was not severe, and it did not show on her face. After holding on for a while, it no longer hurt. Otherwise, she would have really embarrassed herself. On Friday night, Uncle Qin would usually bring her back to the Shi family at this time. Today was different. He was bringing her to her new home. When the car arrived at a villa, she looked at the surrounding villa area in surprise. There's such a luxurious area near High City First High School. I thought this area was filled with apartments for students. Uncle Chin smiled. After all, it's a high school in the province. There are many wealthy areas nearby. This villa is only 10 minutes away from the school. It's very convenient. I remember I chose a duplex apartment. It's not an apartment, it's a duplex villa. At that time, she had only seen some of the interior decorations and did not pay attention to anything else. She did not expect it to be a villa. Why did she live in such a big villa alone? Chapter 1444. This villa was just built last year. At that time, the construction company had a lot of investments from the 4 big families in High City. They were quite rich, so they booked this land to build a villa. The original owner of the villa you chose was one of the developers. However, he had too many properties under his name, so he sold it. The decoration is indeed not bad. No one has lived in it before. I've also hired someone to test it. The air, humidity and other aspects are up to standard. You can live in it with peace of mind. After Uncle Chin finished speaking, he drove the car to the courtyard of the villa. Nianj wouldn't even mind sleeping on the foldable bed in the laboratory with her grandfather. She would never be picky about these external things. However, Uncle Chin had the mission to take care of her after all. He was always so careful and serious. She did not say much and only nodded. She glanced at the villa inside. Not bad. It's not as exaggerated and luxurious as the Sher families. The small villa is quite exquisite. Miss, it's because you have good taste. After all, you chose it yourself. Sher Nianj smiled. All right, I'll go down and take a look. She only went in to take a look before putting down her bag. Let's do it here. There's no need to waste time. I'm sure it's not too far from the school. Then Auntie Xiang and I will come here often to take care of you. There's no need. Just ask Auntie Xiang to come once a week. I'll take a taxi to school myself. How can that work? Why not? Can you treat me as a child for the rest of my life? In another year, I'll be an adult. It's time for me to learn to be independent. Sher Nianj looked around as she spoke. At the same time, she looked out. It was already evening, and the sky was much darker. There didn't seem to be many people living in the surrounding villas. It was dark and very quiet. Are there very few people living here? It's not bad. It's almost half occupied. However, the 2 buildings opposite seemed to be empty and unsold. Or perhaps no one moved in after they were sold. Sher Nianj nodded and retracted her gaze to continue touring her new house. Then, she began the sad homework and revision life of a third-year high school student. On the first day in the new house, she spent it in a sea of books. On Monday, Auntie Xiang went to Lishui Villa to personally make a lot of walnut cakes for her. She said that she wanted her to bring them to school for her classmates to eat. When Sher Nianj came to school with a large and exquisite bag, she attracted the attention of many people. They were all curious about what good things this legendary student, who was also the eldest daughter of the Sher family, had brought. Why was it such an exaggerated big bag? Sher Nianj did not expect it to be so big. Along the way, she rushed to the class. After entering, she did not say a word and began to distribute the items. Thankfully, things like walnut cakes were divided. There were more than 50 students in this class, and each person could get about 3 pieces on average. She did not wait for everyone to arrive and placed some on each table. Nian Nian. Zhao Shaoqing waved at her from her seat. Nianj smiled at her and continued to split the items. As she did so, she said, "Why are you here so early?" "I'm on duty today." As Xiaoqing spoke, she came over to help her distribute. As she did so, she praised her for quickly becoming familiar with her classmates. She praised Nianj for her good personality and said that she was always too shy and would blush when talking to others. Nianj smiled and chatted with her for a while. She then accompanied Xiaoqing to wipe the floor. After tidying up, almost everyone had arrived. The two of them returned to their seats. Nianj casually explained the matter of the walnut cakes to everyone. She only said that it was made by her relatives and was very delicious. She could not finish it herself, so she distributed it to everyone. Everyone was quite happy. However, Nianj was unhappy today. She had been looking at the 3 pieces of walnut cakes on her deskmate's table for the entire morning. Xiaoqing gently poked her back with a pen and whispered, "Come back to your senses. Don't be in a daze. Why are you looking to the side?" Nianj sat up straight again and raised her head to look at the teacher and the blackboard. However, her heart felt empty. She did not know that Enchanting would not come today. She had thought that after the weekend, she would be able to sit with her male god again on Monday. However, he was not here today. How Xiuxia said that there was a physics competition in the province today. Almighty Qin was representing the entire province where High City was located. His competitors were all famous top students in the country. The competition would take at least 3 to 4 days. He would definitely not be here for the next few days. It had been hard on Nianj for the past 3 to 4 days. Enchanting was the reason why she could support herself to come to school with hope every day. As long as she thought of a tall, fair, good-looking, and top student sitting by her side, she would be filled with motivation. No matter how difficult the lessons were, she would be willing to make up for it. However, he was not around these few days. Even Xiaoqing and Hao Xiuxia realized that in the past few days when Enchanting was not around, Nianj was especially listless. Even when the teacher asked her to go to the office to make up for the lesson, she had a sad expression on her face. She was not as motivated as usual. She finally made it to Tuesday afternoon's physical education class. For 2 whole days, Nianj, who did not have a male god sitting beside her, was like a person who had just been sucked away by a demon. She sat there listlessly and wrote notes. As the name suggested, physical education class was a free activity class. Only a small number of people really went out to class. Most of them found opportunities to stroll in the classroom or on the field. Nianj was called out by Xiaoqing to go to the toilet. When she turned her head on the path outside the toilet, she saw that class 3-2 was also having physical education class. Suichi was walking over with another girl. When she saw Nianj only glanced in her direction casually. However, Suichi turned her head away and pulled the girl beside her to quickly walk around her. Nianj raised her brows. She did not understand why she had to take a detour. She was not interested in the matter between Suichi and Tang Xiao, nor did she care about Tang Xiao's explanation. However, Suichi looked like she minded something. It was impossible for her to say that she did not have any other thoughts. Only she knew if she had a guilty conscience. Nianj could not be bothered with her and continued to wait for Xiaoqing. When they came out, the two of them left the toilet and walked along the lush path in front of them. The 2 girls chatted as they walked. Although Xiaoqing was shy, she was actually very gentle and concerned about her friends. She was also very observant. She asked, "Do you like Almighty Qin?" "That's right." It was originally a private discussion between the 2 girls about whether they liked each other or not. However, Shi Nian's answer was too straightforward and calm, leaving Zhao Xiaoqing stunned for a moment. Chapter 1445. Zhao Xiaoqing said in surprise, "When you were with Tang Xiao, didn't you never hide it?" "That's why many people know. There's nothing to hide. At our age, it's normal for us to like anyone." "Do your parents know?" "I know. They are more open-minded about my matters, including if I want to have a boyfriend, have someone I like, I can tell them." "Wow, then your parents are so nice." "Tang Xiao's parents have some business dealings with my parents, but we haven't spent much time together. It's already over." "Why?" "Many people know that you dated Tang Xiao in the past. As for Almighty Qin, it doesn't matter if he knows or not because I feel that he doesn't seem to be interested in what others say. However, it's not good for you to have such rumors." As Zhao Xiaoqing spoke, she turned back to look in the direction of the toilet. She then leaned close to her ear and said, "I didn't remember this, but I remembered when I saw Su Yiqi from class 2. "What rumors?" Shi Nianj was slightly surprised. "Su Yiqi told the girls in her class that it's because your family background is too good and your personality is too strong. You suppress Tang Xiao everywhere. Tang Xiao doesn't like your personality and gradually ignores you. Then, because he brought her to the infirmary once, you fell out with Tang Xiao. You were jealous and split up, saying that she was innocent or something." Hearing this, Shi Nianj did not say anything. She stood where she was and heard footsteps behind her. She turned back and saw that Su Yiqi and another girl had already come out together. Seeing that they had not gone far, Su Yiqi's expression paused for a moment. She still wanted to take a detour. This time, Shi Nianj walked toward her and blocked her path in front of Su Yiqi. She looked at her but did not speak. Su Yiqi's expression instantly turned flustered. "What are you doing?" Zhao Xiaoqing thought that something was going to happen. She rushed over to pull Shi Nianj, only to see that she was standing there motionless with an unknown smile on her lips. When she saw Shi Nianj raise her hand, Zhao Xiaoqing quickly closed her eyes. In the end, she did not hear her hit anyone. When she opened her eyes again, she saw Shi Nianj plucking a small leaf from Su Yiqi's head. She then turned to look at the lush path around her. Although it's autumn, High City hasn't reached the point where there are fallen leaves everywhere. It's really not easy for this leaf to fall on your head. Su Yiqi's expression froze when she raised her hand towards her, and she still hadn't come back to her senses. Shi Nianj casually patted the fallen leaves on her hand and glanced at her. "If you're not feeling well, don't come out and walk around. The wind has been quite strong these few days." Su Yiqi stared at her blankly for a long time, and the girl next to her also tugged at her arm nervously. The two of them hurried away with ugly expressions on their faces. After he walked away, Zhao Xiaoqing quickly came over. "You scared me to death. I thought you were going to hit her." "Why would I hit her? To deal with such a person, hitting her is helping her." Shi Nianj looked indifferent. "She's afraid of me, so she only dares to gossip behind her back to clear her name of stealing someone else's boyfriend. Anyway, I don't have any feelings for Tang Xiao. She can do whatever she wants as long as she doesn't touch my bottom line." Zhao Xiaoqing looked at her in confusion. Seeing her terrified and confused expression, Shi Nianj really wanted to pinch her face, but she held back. "Let's go back to the classroom." Shi Nianj waited for several days and finally saw Qin Sighting return on Thursday morning. The tall and thin boy held a black shoulder bag in one hand and sat expressionlessly by her side. Shi Nianj's heart, which she thought would be very calm, began to beat wildly for a while. Her breathing quickened. After pondering for a while, she whispered to him, "You're back from the competition." Qin Sighting glanced at her and did not answer. Then what should we do if you haven't come to class for the past few days? Do you need notes? When she saw the teacher enter, she lowered her voice and quickly took out her class notes to show him. In the end, she only opened the notes and pushed them onto his desk. Enchanting glanced at her notes indifferently. His originally expressionless face became even more indifferent. It seemed like he had been despised. Enchanting's handwriting was considered beautiful. Her handwriting was graceful and neat, but her class notes were written very much like a primary school student's. It could be considered to have exposed the gap between her learning and his in every class. Ahem, if you don't need my notes, I'll borrow one from the class monitor. No need, Enchanting retracted his light and said indifferently. Then what about the classes you missed? Enchanting was used to being silent. He rarely explained anything to others, especially girls. He then looked at Enchanting, whose eyes had been shining ever since he came back today, as though she had waited for some treasure. For some reason, he was surprised by her unabated enthusiasm. I've already read this week's classes over the weekend. Enchanting lowered his head and pushed her notes back. The moment he lowered his head, he seemed to blink. The moment he lowered his head and blinked, Enchanting felt as though she had been shot in the chest. She felt as though every time she looked at him like this, she would roar in her heart, how can he be so good-looking? She could not come back to her senses for a moment. She reached out to take the notes back, but suddenly recalled that when he pushed the notes back, his hand seemed to have touched her notebook. In an instant, Enchanting seemed to have held something very sacred and quickly and carefully kept it. Chapter 1446. Enchanting thought that Enchanting was probably afraid that she would go to heaven, so he wouldn't smile at her. Furthermore, he didn't seem to smile much. When he spoke to the teacher, his expression was also indifferent. After class, she still wanted to talk to Enchanting, who she hadn't seen for days, but he stood up and left. It was still morning. There was still a whole day. It didn't matter. In the end, for the entire morning, he listened quietly in class. After class, he left. Listening to the discussions of the other students in class, he seemed to have gone to the principal's office. It should be about the competition that he needed to discuss with the principal and the others. At noon, Enchanting still wanted to say something, but how Xiuxia's face was pale as he lay on the table and hummed because he had eaten too much. Enchanting turned back and saw that Zhao Xiaoqing had gone out to buy food. She was not around, so she could only send him to the infirmary with the class monitor. The class monitor was in charge of supporting him, and she helped carry his things. As she walked, she asked him what he had eaten in the morning. After asking, she found out that this little fatty had eaten 6 meat buns in one go before coming to school in the morning. In the morning, he felt uncomfortable in his stomach. He thought it was just flatulence, so he specially bought 2 bottles of Sprite to drink. He wanted to burp to release his breath, and then his stomach was full for the entire morning. Earlier, he really couldn't take it anymore. He went to the toilet to vomit once in the previous class, but now, he still wanted to poop and vomit. He felt like he would collapse at any moment. Even though Enchanting had not officially studied medicine, she knew that this was food accumulation. She helplessly went to the infirmary and asked the class monitor to take care of him. She went to look for the infirmary teacher who was eating in the office. After explaining the situation, the teacher came over to take a look and confirmed that it was indeed food accumulation. He needed to rest in bed and take medicine. If it was too serious, he might have to go to the small hospital outside the school for an injection. The class monitor felt that there was no need for Enchanting, a girl, to follow, so he volunteered to go and let her return to class first. Enchanting helped send him to the hospital outside the school and then returned. When she walked back to the school gate, she suddenly saw a familiar figure from the corner of her eye. She turned around and saw Chin Sighting walking out of the school gate. Right now, he was not wearing his school uniform, and there was no one by his side. She only knew that he seemed to have a good relationship with a brother in school, but they were not in the same class. Furthermore, he was usually too busy and did not have time to gather in school. She was looking in his direction. Chin Sighting had already walked to the parking lot outside the school. She observed from afar and saw that there seemed to be a black car parked there. After he walked over, someone came down to open the car door and respectfully invited him in. After he got in, the car door closed and he disappeared. It was probably the Chin family's car. He parked it in a corner of the parking lot. He just waited there and didn't go into the school to alert the teachers and students. He was very low-key. Nianj recalled how Xiuxia's pale and pained expression earlier. Although the teacher had prescribed a digestive tablet for him, it was clearly still too uncomfortable. She glanced in the direction of the car and turned to enter the pharmacy to see if there were any other medicines that could relieve the pain of indigestion. There were many kinds of Jianwei Xiaoshi tablets in the pharmacy. She knew about the drugs and some scientific names. After standing in front of a row of drugs for more than 10 minutes, she was about to pick up a drug from a well-known pharmaceutical factory when another person came into the pharmacy. Is there any medicine that can relieve cholecystitis? Nianj did not turn back. After all, he was not asking her. However, when she turned around, she suddenly saw the person who had just entered in a small mirror in the middle of the pharmacy. She immediately turned back to look at him. Wasn't this the person who had helped Chin Sighting drive in the parking lot? From his clothes, he should be the Chin family's driver or butler. Cholecystitis. Is it suddenly very painful? The person at the pharmacy counter asked. Yes, our madam was in the car when her cholecystitis suddenly flared up. Her face turned pale and she said she was dizzy. Then, her stomach and gallbladder felt uncomfortable. The pain was very serious. After Nianj heard this, she did not speak because she heard him say madam. Could it be that there was someone else in the car? Chin Sighting's mother. Wow, she was so envious of people who could see their parents often. She had thought that someone like Chin Sighting, who was cold and unsociable, was like her, who often did not have parents by her side. In the end, Mrs. Chin would come to school to visit him. She was really envious. The driver left in a hurry after buying the medicine. Earlier, Nianj had seen the shop assistant in the pharmacy take out the most expensive medicine on the counter and give it to him. She guessed that he had heard about the car or the madam and felt that the other party was rich. Furthermore, in a pharmacy, no matter how effective the medicine was, as long as it was written on it, as long as the price was expensive and the commission was high, they would definitely take out the expensive ones to sell. Nianj did not say anything. She only placed the medicine she had chosen on the counter. She then turned around and bent down to pick up the second last row of medicine. She brought it over to pay the bill. The shop assistant saw the medicine she was holding and asked curiously, "Didn't you say you were buying medicine for your classmate? Your classmate has cholecystitis at such a young age." Nianj did not answer. After paying, she went out. She first sent the medicine to Hao Xiuxia and the class monitor before walking to the parking lot to the black RV. She stood there for a while and did not suddenly knock on the car door. The driver recognized her and rolled down the window to look at her. "Little girl. You've been looking in this way. Is something the matter? I think I saw you at the pharmacy earlier." Nianj then walked over. "Uncle, I'm Chin Sighting's classmate. Just now, I heard that someone here seems to have a serious case of cholecystitis. I've learned some medical and pharmacology from grandfather. The box of medicine you bought earlier wasn't very effective, so I bought this and sent it over." Just as she finished speaking, the car door behind her opened. Qin Siding and a well-maintained middle-aged woman were sitting in the back. Qin Siding glanced at her. It was clear that he could not understand why she was here and how she knew he was here. I saw you outside the school gate just now. How Shosha wasn't feeling well, so I went to the pharmacy to buy medicine for him. I heard what the driver said when he went to the pharmacy to buy medicine and saw that the medicine he took wasn't very effective, so I couldn't help but buy something else. Seeing that Qin Siding's expression was not very good, Shirnianj realized that the person in the car was not his mother. Then, he realized that he was being a busybody to the point that he was being annoying. Seeing his unhappy expression, she hurriedly said, "Did I disturb you? I just can't stand the way the people at the pharmacy are doing things. I'll put the medicine down and leave." As she spoke, she quickly handed the medicine to the driver. The driver received it warmly and even thanked her. Before Shirnianj could reply, Qin Siding had already gotten out of the car. He did not say anything more to the middle-aged woman in the car. He suddenly reached out and grabbed her wrist. Before she could react, he brought her away. Chapter 1447. Shirnianj felt a very clean and warm feeling on her wrist. The cold, tall, and thin boy was almost a head taller than her. She was clearly 1.66 meters tall, but Qin Siding looked like he was really more than 1.85 meters tall. Clearly, she had only taken a quick glance at him. Now that she was pulled away by him and followed behind him, she realized that he was really tall. After being pulled away, she only had time to turn back to look in the direction of the driver. She did not speak again. She was brought by the strong force on her wrist to the walking path under the high wall outside the school. There were students from other classes coming and going on both sides. They seemed to have seen that she was holding Qin Siding's hand. They had already sent many curious, surprised, and gossipy gazes over. Qin Siding retracted his hand and looked at her indifferently. "What exactly do you want?" At this moment, he maintained a distance of 2 or 3 people from her, as though the person who had led her here was not him. Shirnianj still felt that her wrist was warm. This warmth spread all the way to the bottom of her heart. She inadvertently touched her wrist again and raised her eyes to meet his cold gaze. Was the person in the car earlier an auntie? Qin Siding glanced at her coldly. "Yes. I really just happened to see you in that car and saw Uncle Driver buy medicine. You know why I skipped a grade to year 3. I know pharmacology. I was afraid that if Auntie took that medicine, it wouldn't have any effect and would hurt even more, so I bought the medicine and sent it over. I don't have any other intentions. If my actions have disturbed you, I apologize. I won't do it again." Shirnianj now felt that although she had good intentions, she was indeed too abrupt. She also regretted her rashness. Qin Siding took out a black wallet. "How much is the medicine?" The sincere apology and smile on Shirnianj's face instantly disappeared. He was drawing a clear line between them. He did not intend to owe her a single cent, there's no need. "I even dirtied your shirt last time. Compared to your shirt, the money for my small box of medicine shouldn't be much." Qin Siding paused as though he had recalled the matter of the shirt because of her words. He placed the wallet back and said lightly, "All right, we're even." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He had no intention of continuing to speak with her. "Hey, hello. We've been desk mates for a long time. You don't have to keep pushing me away, do you? We're all classmates, and we don't have any goals. Can't we just be friends?" Shirnianj quickly followed him without hesitation. She walked quickly behind the boy and said, "Communicating normally once in a while is better than looking at each other coldly every day, right?" Qin Siding did not turn back. Shirnianj continued to follow unwillingly until they reached the school gate. The students who had bought lunch nearby all looked in their direction. Enchanting's name was already very famous in this school. Other than her, who used to be a little fool who didn't care about the outside world, there was really no one who didn't know him. Enchanting was also famous because of this special case of skipping a grade. The two of them walked outside the school gates one after another, inevitably attracting attention. He still did not turn back, as though he did not hear at all. Enchanting had no choice but to quickly step forward to hold his arm. She almost held onto his arm and tugged at him forcefully. If you really want to be even, that's fine. Let's not talk about the money, but I missed my lunch break to help Auntie buy medicine. It's almost time for class, and I haven't eaten yet. You owe me a meal. Find a chance to return it. Enchanting paused and turned to look at her as though she was crazy. He then looked at her hand that was holding his arm. He did not respond to her suggestion and his eyes were filled with displeasure. His voice was cold as the autumn night. Let go. She did not let go, but her desire to live was strong. How about this? Forget about treating me to a meal. My requirements aren't that harsh. You know that I skipped a grade. I've fallen behind in many of my sophomore classes. No matter how much time the teacher takes to help me with my tutoring, I still fall behind a lot. It's very difficult for me to study now. I'll go to the school library in the afternoon. Come with me. Enchanting's brows were already filled with impatience. He looked at her coldly and did not speak. Seeing that he had no intention of leaving immediately, Enchanting slowly retracted her hand. However, she still carefully tugged on his sleeve. Based on your experience, go to the library and help me find a book that's suitable for me to read right now. It's fine as long as it's a book that can help me quickly make up for my lessons. I swear I won't take up more than half an hour of your time. Just go during self-study in the afternoon, okay? He still did not speak. She gently tugged on his sleeve again. 15 minutes is fine. You can help me find a few books and leave immediately. There's no need for you to accompany me there. Isn't that enough? After all, we're classmates and deskmates. Even without today's incident, you should help me on account of our deskmates' friendship. Otherwise, you're the top student in the school year, and you're sitting next to a flunky who hasn't even finished her second-year classes. It won't be good for you. You can change your seat. After saying that, he pulled out his sleeve and left without anyone noticing. Enchanting, this kind of person who was unmoved by force or persuasion, was really difficult to get along with. She recalled her teacher's words again. How long could he last? She looked at the boy's straight and cold back and took a deep breath. Forget it. He was so handsome. So what if he had a little personality? So what if he was a little cold? Aloofness was the standard of a male god. Forgive him, and forgive him. In the afternoon, during self-study time. It was the teacher who suggested that Enchanting go to the school library to find books to read. She really had to go. She turned back and saw that Hao Shush's seat was empty. He was still lying in the small hospital and had yet to return. Zhao Xiaoqing was buried in her weekend homework alone, so she couldn't disturb her. She could only go by herself. The school library wasn't small, and it wasn't easy to find books. She asked the librarian for the location of some books related to Year 2's curriculum. When she went over, she saw a few tall bookshelves and rows upon rows of thousands or even tens of thousands of books. Her head swelled. Most importantly, the bookshelves were too high. She borrowed a small ladder from the librarian and climbed up and down the bookshelves. After searching for a long time, she still couldn't figure out which type of book was most suitable for her. On the surface, the introductions and covers of the books were similar, but the inside was actually different. It was really difficult to find. Chapter 1448. Nianj carried the ladder to the other side and saw that there was a slightly higher position. She placed the ladder by the side and tiptoed to stretch her arms. She couldn't reach it, so she could only turn back to take the ladder. Suddenly, someone stood beside her. She turned around and saw that the book she had been tiptoeing for a long time had suddenly been handed to her. She looked up and saw Enchanting. Enchanting. She was surprised and blinked her eyes. After confirming that the person in front of her was indeed Enchanting who had rejected her in the afternoon, she suddenly reacted and quickly reached out to take it. "Thank you." The tall and thin man turned back indifferently and took out another book from the bookshelf. After flipping through a few pages, he handed the book to her. "Take it." "Ah. Oh. Nianj was still in a daze and instinctively took it. Seeing her silly expression, Enchanting only glanced at her and turned to go to the other bookshelves. Nianj quickly followed him and found that many of the books that she often used did not need to climb so high. They were all at the bottom, where it was easy to reach. She followed him all the way and did not ask anything. She did not speak much and took the books he gave her. She followed him with a serious and obedient expression. In the end, there were already 6 or 7 books in her arms. Seeing that she could not carry them anymore, Enchanting turned back to look at her. Nianj quickly put on a smile, her eyes curved into crescents. "Anything else?" It was obvious that she could no longer carry them. Enchanting stood in place and did not speak. He casually picked up a book related to high school physics from the bookshelf and began reading. It seemed like this book had nothing to do with her, but after all, he was here. Nianj waited patiently by the side. After a while, her hands were trembling as she held the book. As though he did not see it, Enchanting put the book back and picked up another to read. Nianj took a deep breath and continued to wait with a smile. After waiting for a few more minutes, she really could not carry it anymore. There were so many books that added up to at least 10 kilograms. She had been holding them for more than half an hour. Chin. The name was at the tip of her tongue, but she suddenly did not know how to call him. It seemed like everyone was used to calling him Almighty Chin, although he did not pay much attention to this title. The girls in the first and second year would discuss Senior Chin with red faces. As for her, it seemed like she could call him Senior, but it did not seem appropriate. She also felt awkward calling him Almighty Chin. How about calling him Deskmate? It seemed too childish. Just as she was thinking, the boy's cold and clear voice sounded. Enchanting. She abruptly came back to her senses and looked at him. She saw that he was still standing by the bookshelf, reading a Year 3 physics book. His eyelids did not even lift, but the voice just now was definitely directed at her. She quickly said, "Enchanting, do I have enough books?" The boy standing by the bookshelf did not answer, as though he did not hear her. After about 2 minutes, Nianj planned to place the book on the table at the back. Just as she took half a step back, Enchanting closed the book in his hand and glanced at her indifferently. She immediately stopped in her tracks. "Why are you sitting next to me?" he asked. Nianj looked at him. "Because your grades are good. You're the top student in the school year. I jumped a grade from the second year of high school and need a top student by my side to help me. Just like now, when I don't know what to read, you'll help me look for it. This way, my grades will definitely be fine." Enchanting looked at her coldly. It was clear that he had no patience for her nonsense. She swallowed and could only cough. "Because you're good-looking." The tall, skinny boy raised his brows and looked at her again. Nianj's expression was a little timid, but there was a hint of calmness in her timidity. "Everyone loves beauty. Who doesn't like good-looking people, don't you think? When I'm too sleepy or bored in class, I just need to turn to look at you and I'll immediately be energized. Enchanting looked at her indifferently and did not speak. Enchanting did not know if she was being rude, but he did not like to hear lies. To be honest, if he felt that there was a problem, he could only blame himself for being too difficult to please. He placed the book back on the bookshelf and walked up to her expressionlessly. He picked up the 5 books in her hand and left only one in her hand. He turned to walk out. Let's go. Enchanting looked at the thinnest book in her hand and then at the especially thick books in his hand. Her lips curved up and she quickly followed. Just as the two of them were about to walk out of the bookshelf, the bucket of water by the feet of an auntie who was cleaning in the library suddenly flipped over and dripped all over the ground. The librarians by the side saw it and rushed over in fright when they saw that the books at the bottom of the bookshelf were about to be wet. In the end, because they were too anxious when they rushed over, they did not notice that there were 2 students under the bookshelf. They bumped into the ladder that Enchanting had placed in front of them, and the ladder fell toward Enchanting. Enchanting turned to see it. Just as he was about to dodge, he heard a low cry from behind. Be careful. In the next moment, just as he was about to dodge to the side, Enchanting hugged him from behind and quickly pushed him under the bookshelf. The girl who was a head shorter than him decisively pounced in front of him and pressed him against the bookshelf in a protective manner. The ladder fell by their feet, making a moderate sound. The librarian was so frightened that he rushed over to support the ladder, complaining that the cleaning auntie was so careless. Enchanting and Enchanting, who were under the bookshelf, were silent. Enchanting, who realized that she had hugged her male god and even pushed him against the wall. Enchanting, who realized that not only had he been pressed against the bookshelf by a girl in a protective manner, but the girl's entire body, including her chest, was pressed against him. In the eyes of others, the two of them looked like they were secretly hugging in the library. When the librarian picked up the ladder, she glanced over and left. She clicked her tongue and whispered to the auntie beside her, young people nowadays, they're only in their 3rd year of high school and they're already secretly dating. They actually came to the library for a secret date. Enchanting's reaction was very fast earlier, but now, her reaction was completely sluggish. Especially when she heard the auntie's whispered words, her face turned red without giving her any face. She felt the heat extend to her ears. Liking a male god was a feeling. This feeling of hugging a male god, was, very different. Chapter 1449. She raised her head awkwardly and saw Enchanting standing expressionlessly under the bookshelf. His expression was still indifferent. Can you let go? Enchanting looked down and saw that her hand was still pressed against Enchanting's arm. It could be seen how domineering she was when she suddenly pounced on him and pressed him under the bookshelf. She quickly retracted her hand and took a big step back. I saw that the ladder almost hit you, so, Enchanting did not speak, nor did he explain if he could avoid the ladder faster than her. He took the 5 books in his hand and left. Under the gazes of the librarians, Enchanting could only lower her brows and follow him out. Behind her, the aunties whispered, but this pair is quite beautiful. The man is handsome, and the woman is beautiful. But friends of this age probably won't have a chance to be together when they grow up. What a pity, Enchanting pretended not to hear and jogged to keep up with Enchanting. He was tall and had long legs. If she wanted to catch up to him, she really had to run. Just as she was about to return to class for self-study, the form teacher, Teacher Zhao, happened to walk out of the office. When he saw Enchanting walking back with Enchanting, his gaze was clearly surprised. Enchanting saw the teacher and did not say anything. Enchanting was afraid that the teacher would misunderstand, so she quickly said, Teacher, the books you asked me to find, student Qin accompanied me to the library to help me find them. These are the books. What surprised teacher Zhao was that not only did Qin's sighting return with her, but he also seemed to have accompanied her to the library. When did this kid learn to help others? He had never seen such a scene in 3 years. It's good that you found them. It's self-study time now. Follow me to the office to continue your lessons. All right. Shi Nianj responded and quickly took the book from Qin Sighting's hand. At the same time, she smiled at him to express her gratitude. However, Qin Sighting acted as though he did not see it and returned to the classroom indifferently, as though nothing had happened. Shi Nianj did not dare to look at him again. She turned around and carried the book to the teacher's side. When she was at the teacher's place, she was thinking that since Qin Sighting had helped her find the books, should she treat him to a meal? However, it seemed like the reason why he came to help her find the book was because she said that he owed her a favor. He probably wanted to clear the debt completely. Even if she offered to treat him to a meal, he probably wouldn't go. Just like that, she spent the self-study period with the teacher, hesitating whether she should ask him or not. Finally, the teacher let her go and allowed her to return to the classroom. She ran back with a few books, only to see that the seat next to her was empty. Zhao Xiaoqing waved at her. Shi Nianj walked over and put the book down. You have to eat first when you go shopping, right? Tang Xiao is about to come out. Why don't I treat the few of you, including your little classmate, to a meal? You can go shopping after eating, or I can send you there. There's really no need, Uncle Tang. Besides, at Tang Xiao's and my age, it's more important to consider our studies. Tang Xiao's father was an old man in the business world in his 40s or 50s. He was also the director of a large company. He did not expect that a 17 or 18-year-old girl would block his words. However, after all, the Tang family and the Shi family were still working together. He had always been afraid that something would go wrong. As expected, that brat, Tang Xiao, still failed to stabilize this young lady. They had just become boyfriend and girlfriend, but they suddenly broke up without even a splash. Are we still leaving? Zhao Xiaoqing urged anxiously. Let's go now, Shi Nianj said and smiled politely at the man in the car. Uncle, we'll be leaving first. Without waiting for Tang Xiao's father to say anything, she pulled Zhao Xiaoqing into the street on the right side of the school. Chapter 1450. On the side street, Zhao Xiaoqing tried on 2 student dresses. She liked them both very much, but she was conflicted about which color to choose. Shi Nianj helped her look at them for a long time and finally suggested that she choose the light purple one. Although Zhao Xiaoqing usually wore a pair of glasses and looked quiet and obedient, she was very fair and did not choose the color of her clothes. This kind of light purple dress did not look good on anyone with slightly darker skin, but she could handle it. After the two of them bought clothes, they went to the side to look at the snacks. Zhao Xiaoqing was addicted to the barbecue on the street. Her family belonged to a moderately well-off family. She had normal pocket money and would not be short of money, but she was not the kind of rich and noble who could casually spend money. Therefore, even if she saw the mutton skewers she liked, she could only buy 2, but she would give Shi Nianj 1 to eat together. Every time Shi Nianj said that she wanted to treat her, Zhao Xiaoqing would not agree. She firmly said that even if she became friends with the princess, she could not let the princess use money to step on her head. No matter what, they had to maintain equality. Otherwise, if one side paid too much for a long time, the friendship would definitely tilt. It would be unfair to everyone. Shi Nianj did not mind. After all, she could do whatever she wanted. She had eaten these street food before, but when she ran in with Zhao Xiaoqing today, she strangely felt good. Now, even when she ate the mutton skewers, she felt especially excited. Was that person really Tang Xiao's father? Zhao Xiaoqing had just bitten off a piece of meat from the mutton skewer and asked vaguely. Shi Nianzhi also answered vaguely, N. Tang Xiao really couldn't coax you back, so he asked his father for help. No, he's a little scummy, but he's not that stupid. Shi Nianzhi took a tissue and wiped her mouth. All along, the Tang family has wanted to have a long-term cooperation with the Shi family. I think I've heard my parents mention this before. It's just that there's a very good project, and the Tang family wants to make money from it. Once, Uncle Tang came to my house to deliver something and saw me. Later, he somehow found out about my age and school. He also found out that I actually know his son, so he treated us to a few meals and match-made us a few times. So, you guys were brought together. I thought the two of you were in love freely. It turns out that what others say about rich families not having true free love and having arranged marriages like before is true. It's not that exaggerated. It's just the right time, the right place, and the right people to be together. We don't have any feelings for each other. We just like each other. Plus, our parents have some cooperation, so we just dated for 2 months. After speaking, Shi Nianzhi threw away the bamboo stick in her hand. She turned to buy 2 glasses of water and returned. She handed one to Zhao Xiaoqing. Tang Xiao has nothing to do with me. In the past, we met by coincidence, so don't look at me. Xiaoqing. Shi Nianzhi paused in her drinking and glanced at Zhao Xiaoqing. In the afternoon, when the teacher was helping her with the lesson, he had asked her how she had built a good relationship with Qin Sighting. At that time, she had only said that they had been sitting together for a long time and would occasionally exchange a few words, so they were considered familiar. Now that she was being said this, was it so obvious that she liked Qin Sighting? Then Qin Sighting would definitely be able to tell. But he actually went to the school library. Zhao Xiaoqing was drinking water. She did not know why Shi Nianzhi was suddenly spinning around happily. She was about to call out to her, but Shi Nianzhi had already walked to a small stall by the side to look at all kinds of couple accessories. Zhao Xiaoqing, eldest miss, isn't it too early? The wolf has just seen the meat. He doesn't even know if he can eat it. Are you even going to prepare the bowls and chopsticks? She knew that Qin Sighting had gone out for a competition a few days ago and had returned yesterday, so she would definitely go to school today. She would definitely not skip class. Early in the morning, Shi Nianzhi bought a few glass bottles of warm milk from the fresh milk shop outside the school and put them in her school bag. Right now, the weather was just right. It was neither cold nor hot. Some girls in the school were still wearing summer clothes and had an autumn school uniform jacket draped over them. Shi Nianzhi, on the other hand, had long changed into a long-sleeved shirt and trousers. Her shoulder-length hair was casually tied up, and there were some natural bangs on her forehead. Her school bag was slightly heavy because of the few bottles of milk in it. She carried it on one shoulder and held the bag strap on her shoulder with her hand. She walked directly into the surging crowd of students. When she entered the class, she saw that her dear desk mate had already arrived. After all, she had been delayed for a while when she bought the milk. It was almost time for morning self-study. Qin Sighting was rarely late. She walked over with a smile that was as bright as the morning sun. She saw that the tall and thin boy was still wearing a white t-shirt inside and the same school uniform as her outside. Perhaps because Qin Sighting was tall and had a good figure, such an ordinary school uniform jacket on him made him look like a handsome male celebrity in those branded sportswear advertisements. Looking at it this way, Shi Nianzhi inexplicably felt that the school uniform on her body was becoming more and more beautiful. No wonder she, who rarely obediently wore school uniforms in the past, had been wearing them more and more frequently recently. And, because sitting together like this, they looked like a couple. Before she sat down, she took out a bottle of milk from her school bag and placed it on Chin Sighting's desk. He did not move, and she was not in a hurry to speak. She sat down and raised her eyes to see that when the form teacher came in to check on the morning self-study, she took out a book from her bag and whispered, "I just bought it. It's still warm." At such an early hour, the teacher had just arrived at work. After entering the class to take a look, he returned to the office to prepare for class. From time to time, the quiet classroom would be filled with all sorts of quiet conversations. How Xiuxia, who was behind her, gently poked her with his pen. When she turned back, he glanced at the milk on Chin Sighting's desk and mouthed, "Where's mine?" Zhao Xiaoqing nudged Hao Xiuxia's arm with the corner of her book and glared at him, telling him not to be so shameless. Shi Nianj was amused. She took out 2 more bottles from her bag and gave them to them. She whispered, "I definitely won't leave you behind. There's a straw here. Open it and drink it yourself." Hao Xiuxia did not expect that there would really be one for him. He immediately took the straw and chuckled. Zhao Xiaoqing also took it in surprise and glanced at it, asking, "Why doesn't Almighty Qin have a straw?" Chapter 1451. Shi Nianj immediately took out a bottle of milk and 2 straws from her bag. She knew that Chin Sighting would definitely not take the initiative to drink it. She reached out and took the milk on his table back. She opened her hand and placed the straw in front of him. "Then, to thank you for helping me choose the book yesterday, don't you think my way of thanking you and my service are very inappropriate? Can you give me some face again?" Chin Sighting glanced at the milk she pushed over. He did not speak or look at her, but he picked it up and drank it. Shi Nianj did not expect it to go so smoothly. Although she felt that he did not hate her, when she saw that he really drank it this time, she was so happy that her heart raced. She looked in his direction for a long time and saw that after drinking the milk, he still picked up the water on the table to take a sip. She accidentally saw his Adam's apple moving as he drank the water. Was an 18-year-old boy's Adam's apple already so sexy and good-looking? Shi Nianj stared at the way he drank water and muttered, "Did you drink milk in the past?" "No." Chin Sighting did not look at her, but his voice was indifferent as he replied. "Usually, when you're at home in the morning, won't the auntie at home force you to drink milk? I remember that ever since I could remember, I would be forced to drink a glass of milk by the auntie every morning. Even if she doesn't force me to drink it, I have to buy some. Otherwise, I feel like something's missing." She muttered softly. It was actually a very boring topic, but she simply wanted to take the opportunity to talk to him, even if it was just one more sentence. Chin Sighting was silent for a moment before saying, "I don't like the taste. I rarely drink it." "Aw. You don't like it?" Shi Nianj glanced at the empty milk bottle. "Then why did you?" Chin Sighting did not answer. He turned to look at the school bag she had specially used to store the milk. "This is the last time. Don't buy it next time." Although it sounded like a refusal and an order, there was also a hint of gentleness in it. Shi Nianj's heart pounded for a long time. When she returned to her senses, Chin Sighting had already focused on solving the math problems and ignored her. She pinched the bottle of milk that she hadn't drunk, turned her head, and leaned on the table to slowly ease and calm down her emotions. She didn't dare to raise her head to show too much of her abnormality, but her face was indeed a little hot at this moment. She seemed to be able to hear her idol's voice that was a little softer than usual. "This is the last time, don't buy it next time." How could she be so gentle? Ha! Was he in a good mood today? He didn't keep a cold face the whole time. Or, was it because he had long known that she liked him? Yesterday, he had heard her say that he was good-looking, so, He wasn't the cold and aloof type that would break a girl's heart. Would he be gentler to a girl who admired him? But that wasn't right. In the entire school, the number of girls who liked him and had a crush on him could circle the school building 3 times, but he had never smiled at any of them. It was said that there was once a class beauty who chased after him from the 1st floor to the 5th floor of the school just to get his phone number, but she still couldn't get him to look back, let alone his phone number. Would she be able to get it? Because we're desk mates. Slowly, after a long time, could she save his phone number in her phone? After finally obtaining her idol's cold treatment, she seemed to have a new goal. She only occasionally saw Uncle Chin. Auntie Xiang would also go over to prepare delicious food for her when she was in school every day. At other times, Nianj was already used to being independent. If there was nothing necessary, she didn't want to return to the Shi family. She only wanted to stay in Lishui Villa. After all, her parents had yet to return to China. Hearing that it was the weekend and that she still planned to stay there, Uncle Chin did not force her. After giving a few instructions, he hung up. It was precisely because it was Friday that Zhao Xiaoqing thought that Shi Nianj would have a chauffeur to pick her up today, so she left early. Shi Nianj unhurriedly packed up her books and papers and went out. When she walked out of the school, she habitually walked toward the parking lot. When she realized that she had just told Uncle Chin not to pick her up, she was about to turn around to take a taxi back to Lishui Villa when she suddenly saw a few boys dressed as hooligans from another school walking in this direction with cigarettes in one hand and baseball bats in the other. As a girl, she didn't want to watch so much. It was common for hooligans to fight in and out of school. She only took a glance and was about to walk further away when she suddenly saw Chin Sighting walking out. He had clearly left the class earlier than her. Why did he only come out now? It seemed like the student cadres were often kept behind by the teachers or the director for questioning. They didn't have much time. Chin Sighting was holding a black one-handed bag in one hand and answering a phone with the other. He had only taken 2 steps when he suddenly stopped. He looked forward at the hooligans who had already thrown away their cigarettes and were surrounding him. Seeing that he was surrounded by those people, Shi Nianj's hair instantly stood on end. What was going on? Were these people here to cause trouble for him? Who did Chin Sighting offend? Was it because he won the physics competition 2 days ago and was taller than the students from the neighboring schools? Was that why he was being targeted? Was he being targeted? Before she could come up with a countermeasure, her legs had already gone beyond the range of her brain's control. She quickly rushed over and directly ran behind those hooligans. She even pushed the 2 people in front of her who were holding baseball bats aside. Excuse me, she ran too fast and pushed the 2 hooligans forward. Before they could react, they saw a girl suddenly rush over. She stepped forward and grabbed the boy's arm. Without a word, she dragged him out of the crowd. What happened just now? I don't know. A girl suddenly ran over. She was very strong and suddenly pushed me. I almost King fell. Where is she? She ran away. She ran in and dragged someone away. I don't know what she's doing. She's probably just passing by. Ignore her. CK, continue looking for Zhao Hu. That brat crippled one of my brother's legs yesterday. If I don't remove his arm, I'll write my name backwards. As the crowd walked away, Shi Nianj had already dragged Chin Sighting's arm 20 to 30 meters away. When she felt that those people did not seem to be chasing after her, she stopped and turned back to look, panting. She then looked at Chin Sighting, who she had dragged all the way here. She looked him up and down. Are you all right? Chin Sighting's handsome brows were still cold. He glanced at her hand that was still holding his arm and raised his brows, indicating for her to let go. Chapter 1452. Nianj received his gaze and realized something. Her face heated up and she quickly retracted her hand. I'm talking about those people just now. Are they here to cause trouble for you? They're all holding weapons in their hands. As Nianj spoke, she glanced behind him and realized that those people still did not chase after her. Strange, weren't they here to cause trouble for him? Which eye of yours saw those people looking for me? Enchanting retracted his hand that she had already let go of. He placed one hand in his pocket and looked at her with clear eyes. I saw them walking toward you. And as soon as you came out, they surrounded you. I just happened to walk out. We were just passing by. Enchanting was expressionless. Right now, he was standing on the side of the road, and she was already standing with 1 foot below. He was originally much taller than her, and now, he looked down at her. Seeing that she had run to the tip of her nose with just a few steps, he narrowed his eyes, as though something in the night sky had suddenly blocked the original starlight. Even if you really came to look for me, why did you suddenly run over? Nianj was momentarily speechless. She said she wanted to protect him. It seemed like she was overestimating herself and would even be mocked for watching too many television dramas. Did she think that a little girl like her could handle any situation? But why did she rush over at that time? If she said that it was because he was good-looking, what she would receive would not be the occasional interaction between his desk mates. She would probably be treated coldly again. After all, even she felt that it was a little too rash. Besides, he was a man. Why should she have the mentality to protect him? She did not speak and just stood on the spot to look at him. As he was tall, she had no choice but to raise her head to look at him. The sunlight shone from behind him. Although the boy was standing with his back to the light, she could not see him clearly. At the very least, she could see his eyes. In the reflection, there seemed to be her. Haven't you considered if you'll be injured? Enchanting asked. Nianj didn't know how to explain, so she decided not to. I didn't think too much about it. Didn't think about it. Enchanting's eyes were cold and clear. Miss Sure, no matter what happens to the Chen family, if something happens to you here, I'm afraid it won't be that easy for us to get away with it. If you're injured and disfigured, will your parents let it go? You know I'm from the Sure family. I thought you didn't know anything about me. Enchanting was indifferent. When you sit beside me and introduce yourself, I can hear you. But you didn't respond to what I said to you when I was beside you. So you could hear me. Nianj looked at him. Her eyes were bright and pure. To put it simply, she was reminding him how sincere she was when she sat by his side. To put it bluntly, she was scolding him for pretending to be deaf. Enchanting glanced at her again and turned to leave without saying anything. You're leaving just like that? He stopped and turned back to look at her. Otherwise? I mean, at least I saved you just now. Enchanting's indifferent eyes moved slightly, but he still looked indifferent. The slight change in expression on his face was clearly because of her so-called saving him. What I'm saying is, I risked my life to save you just now because we're desk mates. Regardless of whether it's a misunderstanding or not, my heart is good. You can't be so cold. You have to give me some kind of response. Enchanting looked at her silently for a while, as though he couldn't understand her train of thought. However, at this moment, there was already a commotion at the school gate. From the sound, it was obvious that the people inside had already started fighting. This confirmed that Nianj had indeed misunderstood. That group of people had indeed wanted to take advantage of the fact that there were no security guards and the mailroom master at the door to barge in and fight. Coincidentally, Enchanting had come out at that time. Nianj took advantage of the chaos to walk to his side. Looking at the man who was a head taller than her, she raised her hand and gently tugged on his sleeve. Qin Siding was already used to her little action of tugging at his sleeve. Even if he didn't accept it, he had never wanted to accept it. After all, they had been desk mates for 3 weeks. His gaze shifted an inch toward her. Seeing that he did not immediately turn around and leave, but at least paid attention to her, even if he did not speak, he would not treat her as if she did not exist. Shi Nianzhi smiled at him. Usually, a chauffeur will pick me up at this time. Today, my chauffeur, Uncle Qin, has applied for leave. It's meaningless for me to go back alone. We've been desk mates for a while. Why don't we take this opportunity to have a meal together? Qin Siding's expression did not change. He only glanced at her indifferently and listened to her continue to find excuses. Actually, my parents are busy with the company abroad. I live alone in High City, so I live near the school. Zhao Xiaoqing left first today. I haven't eaten yet. Qin Siding looked at her and suddenly smiled. The moment Shi Nianzhi was mesmerized by his smile turned into a cold smile. Then, he indifferently retracted his smile and pulled his sleeve out of her hand mercilessly. He stuffed one hand back into his trouser pocket and left with the other holding his shoulder bag. Shi Nianzhi stood behind him and looked at him. She sighed. She clearly knew that it was impossible to eat. What was wrong with her brain? Even if it was just a suggestion to walk together, how could she agree to eat? Just as Shi Nianzhi stood on the spot dejectedly and did not chase after him, she was somewhat melancholy considering whether she should eat outside or return to Lishui Villa tonight. Qin Siding, who had already walked more than 10 steps away from her, suddenly stopped in front of the black commercial car. It was the car that Shi Nianzhi found familiar. It was the car she had seen last time, when she helped buy the medicine for cholecystitis. The car had just stopped in front of Qin Siding. He did not even take a second look before turning back. The moment he turned back, he saw that Shi Nianzhi was still standing there with her eyes wide open. She looked at him blankly. In fact, she was considering where to eat, sweet, salty, or spicy. Before Shi Nianzhi could pull herself back from her attention, the tall and thin boy had already approached quickly. He stepped forward and grabbed her wrist. He turned around and took her away in the opposite direction of the school. Shi Nianzhi's expression was shocked. Before she could even return to her senses, she looked at the person who had left and returned. She then lowered her head to look at her wrist. Even though it was only her wrist, there was still the warmth of his palm. It was so real that Shi Nianzhi's face was instantly filled with question marks and exclamation marks. Chapter 1453. Even when she was brought into the crowded street near the school, Shi Nianzhi had yet to return to her senses. When she finally returned to her senses, the warmth on her wrist had already left. She lowered her head to look at her hand and then at the indifferent boy. Seeing that Qin Siding's expression was much colder than before, and then seeing her dumbfounded expression, his handsome brows moved slightly. He then looked at her wrist, where he had held it earlier. Is your hand stiff? He looked at her hand that seemed to be suspended in midair and asked coldly. Shi Nianzhi abruptly lowered her hand and blinked. No. Qin Siding did not say more. He returned to his senses and looked at the restaurants behind him. This street was mostly suitable for students to buy. There were many restaurants of various sizes. Although they were not too luxurious, it was still possible to find a clean restaurant. He said, "Didn't you say you haven't eaten? What do you want to eat?" Shi Nianzhi looked at him. The hand that she had just put down quietly reached behind her back and pinched her other hand. After confirming that it would indeed hurt and that everything in front of her was real, she quickly said before Qin Siding became impatient or regretful, "Anything is fine." Qin Siding glanced at her thin appearance under her school uniform. His gaze shifted away from the beef noodle shop behind her. He turned back and saw a restaurant with stir-fried dishes. He turned around and walked over. Under his silence, Shirnianj understood and quickly followed. After entering the shop, she saw that there were already 2 tables of students eating. However, the students from the other schools nearby did not know each other and did not interfere with each other. Qin Siding walked to the quiet table inside and put down his black shoulder bag. When he looked back, he saw that she had already quickly followed him and signaled the waiter to give her the menu. When she received the menu, Shirnianj was still in a daze. Earlier, he had clearly rejected her. Why did he suddenly turn around and treat her to a meal without saying a word? She raised her head to look at him. At this moment, Qin Siding's phone rang. Not wanting to disturb him from answering the call, she quickly ordered 2 drinks and 2 light dishes from the waiter. She then asked him to leave first. She planned to ask him what he wanted to eat after he answered the call. However, after she finished ordering, she realized that Qin Siding did not answer the phone. The waiter had already walked far away. When Shirnianj sat down, she heard his phone ring again. Qin Siding sat down opposite her and took out his phone. She didn't know if he had turned it off or muted it. Before she could see clearly, she saw him throw his phone to the side and not look at it again. "Aren't you going to answer it?" Shirnianj asked. Qin Siding did not answer. He picked up the lemon water that the waiter had just poured for him and took a sip. The good-looking boy's clean and well-defined fingers held the transparent glass. No matter how one looked at it, this scene was moving. Even when he put down the glass, he did not seem to have any intention of answering her or answering the phone. Shirnianj could sense that he was not particularly sincere in treating her to a meal. Earlier, when the car stopped in front of him, he suddenly turned around. Now that he was sitting here with her, he was probably just taking advantage of the situation. Shirnianj did not ask any more questions. She could only pick up the cup in front of her and drink some water. This lemon water should have been freshly brewed this afternoon. The taste was still very sweet and sour, stimulating the taste buds, but it could make her more awake and confirm that this was not a dream. "By the way, I only ordered 2 light dishes. I don't know what flavor you like, so I didn't order it. Go tell the waiter what you want to eat. After all, we've already sat down. Even if it's perfunctory, we can't waste time like this. Anyway, we have to eat dinner," Shirnianj said softly. She could feel that Qin Siding was not in a good mood. She did not know what was going on between the Qin family or his mother and him, so she could not ask around. She could only use other topics to divert his attention and ease her excitement and nervousness. Qin Siding glanced at her again. "Even if you know it's perfunctory, can you eat it with a clear conscience?" "Why can't I? Even if it's 10 bowls, I can eat it." Shirnianj's eyes were smiling. She was calm and fearless. She was very sincere and straightforward. Qin Siding snorted indifferently and waved for the waiter to come over. After taking the menu and asking a few questions, he learned that she had ordered a fish egg tofu and steamed crab pot. He then ordered a stir-fried shrimp and kelp soup before asking the waiter to leave. Seeing that he was seriously ordering and did not plan to continue being perfunctory, Shirnianj's originally good mood brightened again. "I've never been to this restaurant before, but I saw that the recommended dishes on the menu are all fish or seafood. Are you used to it?" Qin Siding asked. "I'm used to it. Before my family moved to High City to do business, although we were always in an inland city, I liked to eat seafood and fish since I was very young. Now that I live in High City, it's more convenient to eat it." As Shirnianj spoke, she supported her chin with one hand and looked at him. "You like seafood too?" Qin Siding's tone was indifferent. "I'm not picky. I casually ordered 2 more. "Oh. After she said this, the topic seemed to have stopped. She once again fell into a silent atmosphere with no topic to talk about. Enchanting did not look at her. As though there was no one opposite him, he drank water from time to time and waited quietly for the dishes to be served. He was quiet but happy. When the dishes were served one after another, Enchanting asked the waiter to bring her a bowl of white rice. Enchanting originally thought that there were a lot of dishes, but when she saw this bowl of rice, she instantly felt full. She raised her eyes to look at him and picked up her chopsticks to eat. She usually did not have a big appetite. Since she was young, she could not be said to have lived a pampered life, but she would not eat too much. Basically, she was 70 to 80% full. Now that there was such a full bowl of rice, without thinking, she knew that she would definitely eat too much. In the end, she was really full. Enchanting, on the other hand, was not in a hurry to eat. He glanced at her again and saw that she was clearly full, but she was still resisting the urge to continue stuffing rice into her mouth. The man's handsome lips curled into an imperceptible smile. In a flash, he looked at her and asked, "Can you still eat?" "I can eat." After saying this, Enchanting almost burped. She forced herself to hold back, picked up the cup, drank some water, and swallowed hard. Of course she could eat. Almighty Chin was treating. Even if he really wanted her to eat 10 bowls, she had to work hard. Enchanting looked at her for a while and then ignored her. He picked up his chopsticks and continued eating. Chapter 1454. It was a quiet meal time. As expected, Enchanting prepared to leave after eating. He did not have the courtesy of sending a female classmate home after eating. He was simply perfunctory and was about to part ways. Don't think that she couldn't tell that he had suddenly turned to pull her away. He must have used her as a female classmate to avoid the people he didn't want to see in the car. Now that he had used her and treated her to a meal, he was about to leave without explaining. However, Enchanting was quite happy to be used. She was also full. The two of them walked out of the restaurant, and the clean youth walked by her side. If they were not going to separate and return to their own homes, but to Lishui Villa together, they could stroll on the path home for 10 to 20 minutes. How good would that be? Just thinking about it would be beautiful. She turned around and saw that he was holding a shoulder bag. His clean and slender fingers were also very beautiful. She suddenly smiled. Just as Enchanting was about to walk in the opposite direction, she suddenly leaned over. "Almighty Chin, good desk mate. Can you give me your contact number?" Enchanting paused in his steps and lowered his head to look at her. She smiled at him and reached out her hand to him. "We've been desk mates for so long, and we've eaten together. It's just a phone number. There's no need to not give it, right?" Enchanting looked at Enchanting and said indifferently, "You're thinking too much." "I'm not thinking much. I just know someone. It's not too much to ask for his phone number." Enchanting did not care how cold his attitude was. Enchanting didn't care how cold his attitude was. She was already used to it. She leaned close to him and maintained a close distance from him. She looked up at him and tugged on the zipper of his backpack. "Anyway, I'll be able to ask you sooner or later. Instead of being pestered by me in the future, why don't you give it to me now? I promise I won't call you for no reason, nor will I send random messages. I'll quietly let your number lie in my phone's contact list. I definitely won't harass you." Enchanting looked at her and ignored her. He walked away. On the crowded street, many students in school uniforms were walking around. The clean and tall young man was wearing a white t-shirt and a blue and white school uniform. His black backpack made his back look even colder. He didn't even look back as he walked away. Nianj, on the other hand, stood there alone and laughed foolishly. I knew it wouldn't be that easy. Forget it. Anyway, she had just eaten with Qin Siding. Just this alone was enough for her to be happy for the entire semester. Hee hee. On Saturday afternoon, Nianj had just finished writing the papers for her homework at home. She was still checking the difficult questions when her phone rang. She glanced at the number and got up to answer the call. She walked out to pour herself a glass of water and walked to the spacious balcony of the bedroom opposite the study. Nian Nian, do you miss Mom and Dad? When we go back at the end of this month, do you have any gifts that you want? Shall I buy it for you? Her mother, Ms. Yang Jinjin, sounded very cheerful on the other end of the phone. She didn't need to guess to know that Shida Group's new cooperation in America was going smoothly, and it should be a very big deal. In recent years, Shida Group had been rising rapidly in High City. It was doing very well in all aspects and was already highly regarded by the industry. It had already begun to look like a large enterprise. Her parents were getting busier and busier. When she was young, they rarely had time to accompany her. Now, they only saw each other a few times a year. She leaned against the balcony to drink water and listened to Mrs. Yang Jinjin's smiling voice. She curved her lips. There's no need. I don't lack anything. When you fly back, choose a good weather so that you won't get airsick when the plane is bumpy. Just be careful. Little girl, you've been like a little adult since you were young. I'm airsick because of the after effects of being pregnant with you. I've never been airsick in the past. As Mrs. Yang Jinjin spoke, she suddenly said, coincidentally, Mom has nothing to do today. Come, report to your mother about the recent situation in school. Are you used to everything after skipping grades to year 3? Is there a lot of pressure in your studies? Year 3, you can imagine. Nianj smiled. If I say there's no pressure, you'll definitely be able to tell that I'm lying to you. Is it very difficult? If it really doesn't work, ask your grandfather to talk to the school. There's no need. I'm fine. You don't have to interfere. She had just had a meal with her male god. To her, it could be said that their relationship had taken a sharp turn. It was very likely that she would receive his phone number tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, they would become boyfriend and girlfriend, and the day after that, they would kiss. How could she go back to year 2 to be a junior? All right, let's talk about it after your dad and I go back. Right now, the family's company is indeed getting busier and busier. Mom and Dad might really neglect you in too many ways. Nian Nian, you've been so sensible since you were young. Mom really feels sorry. She looked at the villa that seemed to have never been lived in before. She looked at the bare villa yard and said to the phone, when I was 7 years old, when you said these words, I might have hugged your and my dad's legs and cried for a while. Now, I don't feel it anymore. Besides, at my age, freedom is a different kind of happiness. You don't have to owe me anything. Madame Yang Jinjin sighed and finally decided to return to the topic at hand. Nian Nian, Mom wants to discuss something with you. Hearing the tone of the other party, Nianj roughly guessed something. Is it about my plan to apply for the medical university again? Yes, although you're still young, you should be very clear about Shida Group's current situation. Your father and I only have one daughter. In the future, we'll have to leave all kinds of heavy responsibilities to our own children. We hope that you can give up your dream of studying medicine. It's enough to have a medical expert like your grandfather at home. You should go abroad to learn business management and business finance. If you agree, your father and I will arrange for you to stay in America when you're about to graduate. Nianj was not in a hurry to refuse. After a moment of silence, she gently placed the cup of water on the balcony. Mom, I didn't grow up in your office, but in my grandfather's laboratory. Nien Nien, I know what you want to say, but your father and I really hope that, you know what you owe me. I've never complained. I've been used to making my own decisions since I was young, so I still plan to follow my own path in the future. Grandfather is also a guest professor at the medical university. Studying medicine is the path I've thought about a long time ago. I won't change it. Nien Nien, when you come back, ask Uncle Chin to pick me up. Recently, I'll be living near the school. I won't be returning to the Shi family. With that, Shi Nianj hung up the phone, picked up the cup, and turned to return to the study. Chapter 1455. On Monday, when they went to school, the teacher checked the papers they had done at home over the weekend and was furious. This was because the correct answers for the exam this time were at least 2 levels higher than before. As a result, many people were on the verge of passing. More than half of the students failed, and there was not even a single full score. The reason he did not get full marks was that Chin Siding had handed in a blank paper. Of course, the teacher did not dare to ask why Crown Prince Chin, who was usually outstanding and always scored full marks, handed in a blank paper this week. She only asked around during class and learned from a teacher who went on a business trip over the weekend that he saw Chin Siding at the airport early Saturday morning. He was probably not in High City for the weekend and did not take the time to write the papers. Chin Siding did not explain at all. He did not even find a reason to hand in a blank paper. This really made the teacher love and hate him. As a result, the entire morning class was spent in a gloomy mood. Even the physical education class was occupied by the form teacher. He asked the entire class to sit together and analyze the questions. It wasn't easy for her to endure until noon. Shi Nian's mind was already in a mess. She turned to look at Chin Siding and saw that he was actually writing the weekend's papers. The teacher had clearly explained the entire paper in the morning class and planned to leave another paper with the same model but different questions tonight. He just needed everyone to remember these ideas. However, what she saw was that Chin Siding had written 2 ways to solve the question. The final answer was the same, but both methods were correct. She asked in surprise, "Male God, are you planning to study science all the way to the end? Are you going to MIT after graduation?" By the time she realized that she had accidentally blurted out the word "male God," Chin Siding had already stopped writing and turned to look at her. Shi Nian's expression did not change much, nor did she deliberately hide the embarrassment of accidentally calling him a male god. She only naturally blinked at him and smiled even wider at him. "It doesn't matter what I learn. After all, I'm not on the same path as you." Chin Siding retracted his gaze and continued to disintegrate. The black pen moved slightly in his hand, leaving behind rows of clear, beautiful, and smooth words. At the same time, he seemed to have thought of something and said coldly without raising his eyelids, "I only need to tolerate you sitting by my side for another year." Shi Nianj rolled her eyes at the pen in his hand. "Of course not. After all, I'm going to study medicine. Save the dying and help the injured, understand?" The brush in Chin Siding's hand stopped and he turned to look at her. Shi Nianj was unconvinced by his words earlier. Before he could speak, she said, "You'll just be entangled with these scientific things like physics, chemistry, and advanced mathematics every day. I'll wait for you to run to the hospital to queue up and beg me to treat you." After speaking, Shi Nianj stood up and left. This was the first time she had been angry since she sat next to Chin Siding for nearly a month. He actually said that he would tolerate her sitting by his side for another year, and even said that they would not be on the same path in the future. Was she that annoying? Shi Nianj had never doubted her character, appearance, or any other aspects. She had never considered what she was inferior to or what others were inferior to. However, today, she had really suffered a blow, causing her to be listless when she ate in the school cafeteria. Why are you a little listless today? Zhao Xiaoqing tapped her plate with her chopsticks. What's wrong? Shi Nianj supported her chin with one hand as she sat by the dining table. As she pulled at the rice on her plate, she said, if I change seats with Hao Xiuxia and be your desk mate, will you be happy? Zhao Xiaoqing widened her eyes. Of course I'll be happy. How long has it been since you skipped a grade to our class? Everyone likes you now. We're good friends. If you can sit with me, I'll definitely be happy. Shi Nianj nodded and did not ask any more. She lowered her head and continued eating. She had already made up her mind. It wasn't that there was a problem with her. It was Enchanting who was blind. Before class in the morning, there was half an hour to rest on the table. Shi Nianj leaned on the table and closed her eyes, wanting to sleep for a while, but she could not fall asleep. Especially when she could hear the sound of the person beside her writing. Although it was very quiet, her deskmate was very close. In the quiet classroom, and with her ears that she did not want to perk up, she could hear it especially clearly. Couldn't he tell that she was angry? He really didn't have any love for his deskmate. He couldn't even say a nice word. Shi Nianj really couldn't sleep. After a while, she realized that the person beside her was no longer writing. It was very quiet. It was so quiet that she didn't know if he was resting on the table or doing something. However, she didn't seem to hear him get up. He should still be sitting, right? After a few minutes, she closed her eyes and turned her head. She carefully opened her eyes and met Enchanting's eyes without any precaution. Shi Nianj was shocked. Enchanting did not avoid her gaze. He only looked at her before slowly shifting his gaze away and continuing to write the papers on his table. It was as though nothing had happened, but Shi Nianj's heart was thumping wildly. Was he looking at her? Was he watching her sleep? Just now, she was still a little angry in her heart, but at this moment, that bit of anger seemed to have been instantly forgotten. All that was left was the appearance of the clean and handsome young man sitting there quietly looking at her. That kind of calm but not distant and indifferent gaze. Her heart was no longer angry, but her face began to heat up. In the afternoon experiment class, Zhao Xiaoqing waved her hand in front of Shi Nianj's eyes. When she saw her raise her head, she said, "You're not normal this afternoon. At noon, you seem to have been abandoned. Then, you were happy the entire afternoon. What's wrong? Really?" Shi Nianj lowered her head to do the experiment. Aren't I very happy every day? Being lively and happy is different from being happy like a kitten that has stolen a fish. Zhao Xiaoqing leaned over and asked, "Did Almighty Qin give you his phone number?" "No." "Then why are you smiling foolishly?" Shi Nianj looked at the other students around her and carefully whispered into Zhao Xiaoqing's ear, "When I was sleeping at noon, Enchanting looked at me." "Ah. Why did Almighty Qin look at you?" "That's right. Why did he look at me?" Shi Nianj's smile widened. "How long did he look at you?" "Just a few seconds, right? You're so happy in a few seconds? Maybe he's looking at you because your arm was on top of his paper when you were sleeping. I don't care. Anyway, he looked at me." Shi Nianj was still very happy. Her eyes were curved, and there seemed to be stars in her eyes. She turned back to look behind her and saw that Enchanting was assisting the teacher with the experiment. The white lab coat on him was especially eye-catching. It was really good-looking. She wondered if she would have the chance to see him wear a doctor's white coat in the future. That would be a dream come true. Chapter 1456. Shi Nianj, what are you looking at? The teacher suddenly glared at her warningly. Pay attention to the experimental tools in your hands. Don't hurt your hands. Shi Nianj, who was suddenly caught by the teacher, quickly turned her head. Zhao Xiaoqing chuckled and looked at her. Shi Nianj also lowered her head and snickered. When the teacher wasn't paying attention, she turned back and saw that Qin Siding was still standing there motionlessly doing experiments with the teacher. In comparison, Qin Siding was much taller than the teacher. Standing there, he was really eye-catching. Don't be infatuated. Hurry up. If you haven't finished the experiment by the end of class, your almighty Qin will laugh at you. Zhao Xiaoqing patted her. The words, your almighty Qin, made Shi Nianj feel as though she was about to float. After coming out of the laboratory, Zhao Xiaoqing was still laughing at her. Just as she was about to walk back to the floor where the class was, she suddenly saw Tang Xiao standing there with an unlit cigarette in his hand. He turned to see Shi Nianj and his gaze was fixed on her. Smoking was definitely not allowed in the school, but usually, these boys would secretly take cigarettes to the toilet or to the back of the school to smoke. Only these young masters from especially well-off families dared to openly walk in the school building with cigarettes. Although he did not smoke the cigarette, he did not hide it. He held it between his fingers and stood there, staring in Shi Nianj's direction. He seemed to want to say something, but when he saw that there was another female classmate beside her, he hesitated for a second. In this second, Shi Nianj grabbed Zhao Xiaoqing's arm and turned to enter the class. Tang Xiao stood where he was and frowned in annoyance. He turned around and was about to leave when he suddenly saw Qin Siding walking up the stairs on this side. The moment Tang Xiao saw Qin Siding, his expression immediately turned cold. He didn't know what was wrong. They were both in their third year of high school, and it wasn't like they had never met Qin Siding before. There had never been any disputes or conflicts between them. The two of them only existed in the discussions between the students in the school and had never interacted much. However, although Tang Xiao had a shadow in his heart over the deduction of points, it wasn't that serious. Why did he feel that something was wrong when he met Qin Siding these 2 times? He felt that the pressure was stronger than before. Almighty Qin. Tang Xiao knew how everyone usually called him, so he spoke politely. Qin Siding only glanced at him indifferently. He did not stop and directly walked past him. I heard that my girlfriend is your desk mate now. Tang Xiao looked at him and didn't beat around the bush at all. I say, almighty Qin, we're not strangers anymore. Last time, you were the one who deducted my points. Look, I didn't even let out a fart. Now that my girlfriend has skipped a grade to your class, I'm just telling you. Since we're in High City First High School, give me some face and treat her more. Nian Nian's personality is very straightforward. If she's offended you in any way, tell me. Don't be like her. Qin Siding continued to walk forward without looking back. Tang Xiao was very unhappy and walked over. I say, almighty Qin, we're not strangers anymore. Last time, you were the one who deducted those points. Qin Siding suddenly stopped in his tracks. Tang Xiao didn't expect him to stop and raised his brows. Girlfriend. Qin Siding looked at him indifferently. Or ex-girlfriend. Tang Xiao. A mouthful of turbid air suddenly surged in his chest. Didn't Qin Siding usually ignore everything outside the window? How did he know so much about Shi Nianj? In this month, other than being desk mates, could it be that they had any interaction? Tang Xiao pinched the cigarette in his hand. Just as he was about to speak, Qin Siding expressionlessly turned and entered grade 3 class 6. He did not even look at him. Seeing that Qin Siding's back view was exactly the same as Shi Nianj's, Tang Xiao felt the turbid air in his chest become even fiercer. Damn it, why would Nian Nian sit with such a cold-blooded animal? Letting her sit by Qin Siding's side, Was he sure it wasn't psychological abuse to Nianj? What was the teacher of class 6 thinking? After Nianj entered the class, she sat at the back and chatted with Zhao Xiaoqing. There were still photos of the experiment results on her phone. The two girls were satisfied with the results of their experiment and their faces were filled with happiness. Seeing that Qin's sighting had returned, Nianj quickly turned around and put down her phone. She turned to look at him and saw that his eyes were clear and expressionless. It was clear that he did not intend to comment on her results in the laboratory. That's right. He was the only student who was qualified to do experiments with the teacher. Her and Zhao Xiaoqing's small results were nothing in his eyes. What could he say? But she still wanted to hear his praise. At this moment, the class monitor walked in from outside. As he walked, he turned back to look out. He happened to be coming to the back to collect everyone's exercise books. When he passed by Nianj, he asked, "Tang Xiao from class 2 is looking for you, right?" He still hadn't left. Nianj turned to glance at the class monitor. The class monitor had only casually asked and left. However, Nianj glanced sideways at the door of the class. If Tang Xiao hadn't left before the next class started and the teacher saw him, she didn't know what he would think. She was about to get up, but she didn't notice that her phone had been placed by the table. Because she got up, her phone fell. She subconsciously rushed to catch it, but an arm by her side caught the phone at a faster speed. She bent down too quickly and her chin hit his shoulder. Nianj raised her eyes and met Qin's sighting's gaze. Most importantly, this posture was very, very close. It was as though they could feel each other's breathing in an instant. Zhao Xiaoqing almost screamed when she saw this from behind. Qin's sighting turned his eyes away and placed his phone back on her table, not minding it at all. However, Nianj felt that her chin, face, and ears were rapidly heating up. She quickly picked up her phone and felt that it was a little hot. She turned back to see that Zhao Xiaoqing was covering her mouth and laughing, as though she had seen something ambiguous. Just now, she really felt Qin's sighting's breathing. So close. Nianj took a deep breath and decided not to go out. The central air conditioner outside was probably because of her father. He didn't want their relationship to be too stiff. This kind of relationship between families shouldn't be handled by students like them. She couldn't be bothered to care. Right now, she only knew that her heart was about to jump out. Her nose seemed to be stained with Qin's sighting's breath. Nianj raised her hand to touch her face. It was so hot. Chapter 1457. At night, a few distant relatives came to Zhao Xiaoqing's house today. They chatted with her parents. Originally, a house of more than 100 square meters was enough for a family of 3 to live in, but because there were more people, it could not fit. Zhao Xiaoqing was preparing to go to her aunt's house next door to stay. She even said that the papers would probably be torn up by her aunt's 2-year-old baby when she was halfway through. After all, her aunt had to take care of the child. She didn't know if she could sleep soundly there. Nianj simply brought Zhao Xiaoqing to her place. In any case, she was the only one living in the house in Lishui Villa. There were 2 floors up and down, and she was alone every day. With Zhao Xiaoqing living there, it would be more lively. After the 2 of them reached home, they finished the 2 papers and tested each other's English listening skills. By the time they finished the homework and revision tasks given by the teacher, it was already past 8 in the evening. I heard from the teacher that from next month onwards, we won't be able to leave school before 6 o'clock. Until the college entrance examination, we might have to study in school until 9 o'clock at night. Zhao Xiaoqing lay on the balcony, holding the milk tea Nianj had just made for her. As she drank it, she said somewhat melancholy, in addition to the homework every day, I feel that it'll be very difficult to sleep before 12. Nianj smiled and took out another cup of milk tea. The milk tea at home was also made by Auntie Xiang. It was much better than the milk tea outside. It was also healthy and clean. Earlier, Zhao Xiaoqing had only taken a sip when she stood on the balcony with a look of pleasant surprise and almost cried out, exclaiming that it was delicious. Nian Nian, what time do you usually sleep? Zhao Xiaoqing asked. Me, around 11 o'clock. That won't do. We're spending more and more time in school, and we have more and more homework when we get home. We can't finish it before 11 o'clock. Zhao Xiaoqing looked dejected. There are still so many months before next year's college entrance examination. I really feel like I've fallen into the darkness. I don't know when I'll see the light. The college entrance examination is really too scary. I'll write some during self-study at night. I'll write some more when I come back at night. It shouldn't be a problem. Nianj sat by her side. The two girls sat on the balcony, drinking milk tea and chatting. The sky had already turned dark. Zhao Xiaoqing looked at the large but seemingly uninhabited villa opposite her. Is there no one living opposite you? Or is the owner of the house not back yet? It's already so late, why aren't the lights on? I don't think there's anyone here. I've been living here for quite some time now, and I've never seen the lights on across the street. Nianj saw that the milk tea in Zhao Xiaoqing's cup was almost finished and reached out to take it. Do you still want to drink? Zhao Xiaoqing looked conflicted. I still want to drink, but it's too late. If I drink too much, I probably won't be able to sleep. I think so too. Then I'll give you more milk. Great, Nian Nian, I really didn't expect that. Your family is also very famous in High City, but you actually have such a good personality and are so clever with your hands. Your house is also clean, and you don't have the temper of a rich young lady at all. When you grow up, if any man can marry you, it will definitely be a blessing that he has cultivated for several lifetimes. As Zhao Xiaoqing spoke, she followed her in. She stuck her head out and looked at the milk tea powder in Nianj's hand. She pointed and said, more. Don't really put fresh milk in it. This milk tea powder tastes really good. If it really doesn't work, I'll drink another cup. At most, we'll lose sleep together tonight. The two of them played at home for a long time until they finished showering in the master bedroom and guest bedroom. Nianj was about to go to the guest bedroom to see if she needed anything when Zhao Xiaoqing's scream suddenly came from the study next door. When Nianj heard the heart-wrenching scream, she rushed to the study in fright. When she pushed open the door, she saw Zhao Xiaoqing sitting on the ground with a pale face. She stared at the complete human skeleton in her study in fear. Nianj, Nian Nian, what is this? Why does your house have this? Zhao Xiaoqing was so frightened that she could not speak clearly. Her eyes were red. She stood up from the ground and quickly moved behind her to hide. Nianj could clearly feel that her hands were cold from fright. Cough, I forgot that the guest bedroom is too close to my study. I should have closed the study door earlier. Nianj looked at the human skeleton inside. Don't be afraid. It's just a skeleton. It's a real skeleton? That's right. A human skeleton. That's right. Zhao Xiaoqing's face turned green and she took several steps back. No, it's not a real human skeleton. It's just made according to the ratio of a normal human skeleton. Nianj quickly said, Isn't my grandfather a medical scientist? I've been influenced by him since I was young. I've always liked medical things. This skeleton was a birthday gift from my grandfather when I was 15. It's rare to see a skeleton made of this material on the market. Many doctors have this kind of thing in their homes or offices. Don't be afraid. Even if it was fake, it was too realistic. Zhao Shaoqing turned to walk out with a pale face. Shi Nianzhi quickly closed the door. Why don't you sleep in my bedroom? I'll sleep in the guest bedroom. If you're too close to the study, you'll be afraid when you sleep. It's fine. I'll be fine after a while. I was really shocked just now. Zhao Shaoqing sat down on the sofa and patted her chest. She then looked at her in disbelief. Do you really plan to study medicine in the future? What's wrong with that? It's so tiring to study medicine. I heard that you can't graduate in 4 years. Even if you go abroad to study, it'll be very hard. Your family is in business. Don't you plan to study finance? I've been with my grandfather for too long. Many things are deeply rooted in me and even affect the direction of my life. I can't change them even if I want to. Zhao Shaoqing found it hard to imagine what kind of mentality Shi Nianzhi, a girl who looked cheerful and sweet, had to calmly face such a terrifying skeleton in the study. Even if it was fake and not real bones, a very young girl lived here alone every day and did not change her expression when facing a human skeleton. It was hard to imagine how strong her heart was. At night, Zhao Shaoqing still could not control the fear in her heart. After lying down for half an hour, she could not take it anymore and ran to Shi Nianzhi's bedroom to sleep. She did not plan on letting Shi Nianzhi sleep in the guest bedroom. After all, she was very afraid to sleep alone here. In the end, the two girls lay on the bed in the master bedroom. Each of them hugged a blanket and chatted until midnight. The next day, when they went to school, each of them had a pair of dark circles under their eyes. Chapter 1458. Zhao Shaoqing stayed at Lishui Villa for 2 nights. After her relatives left, she immediately said that she wanted to scram back home to sleep. If there was nothing serious, she definitely wouldn't dare to sleep with her family's skeleton again. 2 days later, early in the morning, Shi Nianzhi went to school by herself. When she arrived at the school gate, she received a call from Uncle Qin, informing her that her parents would be returning home in a while. He also told her when he would come to pick her up. Shi Nianzhi was chatting on the phone when she suddenly saw Qin Sighting walking over from the shady road opposite her. She immediately walked toward him uncontrollably. After all, this was the first time she saw him before entering class in the morning. She could actually see the direction he had come from. Previously, she had only seen the black commercial car driven by his mother and the Qin family's driver, but she didn't know if Qin Sighting lived in the Qin family or lived outside. Or if he lived with a good brother in school. She didn't know if he drove to school or had a car. Today, she finally saw him and realized that he actually walked to school. He was already 18 years old, right? He should be able to get a driver's license and drive legally, right? The clean youth had the temperament of a man and a man. He was handsome and quiet, and when he walked, his long legs seemed to carry an immortal aura. No matter what, in her eyes, Qin Sighting carried an immortal aura. She quickly hung up the phone and leaned over to greet him. She sped up and ran over. She was naturally very happy to see him 10 minutes earlier than usual. Qin, oh. When Shi Nianzhi ran over, she happened to be behind him. She reached out to pat his back, wanting to give him a surprise and greet him at the same time. However, before her hand could touch his shoulder, Qin Sighting turned around and suddenly held her wrist. A sharp pain instantly came from her wrist, as though he could break it in an instant. Seeing that it was her, Qin Sighting let go of her hand, but Shi Nianzhi covered her wrist in pain. She felt that if he had exerted a little more force, her wrist would have cracked. The pain caused a thin layer of sweat to appear on the tip of her nose. She held her wrist with one hand and looked up at Qin Siding. With a bitter expression, she said, "I'm sorry. I should have told you in advance before touching you." Qin Siding frowned slightly. At the same time, he saw that her wrist was already red. The expression on his face was clearly not happy. He did not know if it was because he was overly guarded, causing her wrist to turn red, or because of something else. "You go first. I won't touch you again. I'll leave later." She knew that Qin Siding's strength was not small. Although he was fair and clean, such a tall boy must be very strong. Last time in the library, she had only thrown him there in a moment of desperation. In fact, it was very easy for him to dodge. She had thought about it later. Today, she had finally confirmed that Qin Siding looked gentle, but he was actually a boy full of strength. It was just that the price to pay for this verification was a little high. In the future. Qin Siding's voice sounded a little hoarse. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she felt that he didn't sleep last night. Not only did his voice sound hoarse, but his eyes were also cold and tired. However, seeing her aggrieved and unable to blame him, his handsome brows furrowed slightly. He glanced at her wrist again. "Call me before you suddenly approach." As he spoke, he suddenly reached out and tugged her wrist over. He turned it back and forth to look at it. After confirming that it was only red and that it was probably just a physical pain, he let go. Shi Nianj, on the other hand, recovered from the pain in her wrist and was then stunned by the remaining temperature on her wrist. She blinked. Before she could recover, she heard him ask, "Does it hurt?" She saw that Qin Siding seemed to be frowning because of his defensive actions. At this moment, Shi Nianj felt that even if her wrist was broken, it would be worth it. "It's fine. It just hurt for a while. It's fine now." Shi Nianj quickly placed her still red wrist behind her back. Qin Siding was still looking at her with a serious expression. Shi Nianj smiled at him dryly and took the opportunity to take a closer look at his expression and gaze. "Didn't you rest well last night? You don't seem to be in a good mood." Qin Siding no longer looked at her. He turned to walk toward the school gate. Hearing that she was following him, he answered in a low voice, "N." Shi Nianj no longer felt the pain in her wrist. She even felt that the pain was too wonderful. Qin Siding actually did not ignore her words. Even if it was just an "in," it could at least be considered a positive response to her idle chatter. When the two of them walked into the main entrance of the school, the nearby students turned their gazes over. Shi Nianj felt that she was open and aboveboard, and there was nothing to avoid. Her gaze was calm, and her steps were also calm. Qin Siding completely ignored those gazes. It could be said that he had never looked at anyone passing by and walked straight in. After entering the class, Qin Siding went to the podium to put down the papers. Shi Nianj went to her seat alone. When she lowered her head to put down her bag, she saw that her wrist was still red. It could be seen how powerful his grip was. Logically speaking, no matter how strong Qin Siding was, he would not suddenly use so much strength just because someone suddenly slapped him early in the morning. His defensive state earlier, coupled with the fact that he did not seem to have slept much last night, she could not help but suspect that the Qin family, one of the so-called 4 big families in High City, was really like what others said. There were too many secrets in a wealthy family, and everyone was not as relaxed as they seemed. At the very least, Qin Siding seemed to have many things that she could not guess, but he clearly seemed to be in the sunlight, which made her even more confused. Qin Siding walked over. Shi Nianj quickly straightened his table and chair so that he could sit down more comfortably. She then remembered that it was still very early and that the teacher would probably arrive in half an hour. She reached out and pulled the curtain slightly, just enough to block the sunlight from Qin Siding's table. She thought that he might be able to rest on the table for a while. When Enchanting walked over, he saw her actions. He then caught a glimpse of her other careful actions. At the same time, he saw the mark on her wrist that had yet to fade when she went to pull the curtains. He did not say anything and only turned back to instruct the lifestyle committee member. The lifestyle committee member nodded in surprise and stood up to leave. Enchanting walked back to the table and sat down. In less than 10 minutes, the lifestyle committee member brought back an ice bag from the infirmary and gave it to Enchanting, asking her to put it on her wrist. Enchanting looked at the ice bag that suddenly appeared in front of her and turned to look at Enchanting in surprise. Seeing that he was flipping through his notes and not looking at her, her heart instantly swelled. Chapter 1459. How Xiuxia was a few minutes late today. After entering the class and sitting down, he saw that the teacher had yet to arrive. He quickly called out to Enchanting from behind. "Nian Nian, quick, lend me the papers from last night to copy. My parents quarreled at home last night, causing me to go downstairs and wander around for half the night without doing my homework. Later, I was too sleepy and didn't write. Teacher Zhao will be here soon. Quickly lend it to me to copy. I promise I'll finish in 5 minutes." "All right, I'll look for it." Enchanting turned back and saw how Xiuxia's anxious expression. She lowered her head and rummaged through her bag, but after searching for a long time, she couldn't find it. "Wait a minute. Let me think where I put it. It seems to be in a book. I brought a lot of books today. Hurry up, old Zhao is coming." Every time Zhao Xiaoqing entered the class, she would hand in her papers immediately. How Xiuxia knew her habit. He knew that she didn't have any papers in her hands, so he could only look for Enchanting in front of her to save her. However, Enchanting did bring a lot of books today. She didn't know where she had placed them. Seeing how anxious the little fatty was, she said, "Why don't you copy Almighty Qin's papers first?" "All right. That's even better. Almighty Qin's accuracy is 100%. I'll just copy 2/3 of it. I'll just write the rest randomly. Old Zhao definitely won't find out that I copied it." How Xiuxia nodded repeatedly. Enchanting saw that Enchanting, who was sitting by the side, heard her words but did not react. She picked up his bag and placed it on her lap. She opened it and searched. When the girl at the next table got up to pour water, she saw Enchanting's actions and said in surprise, "Classmate Shi, your relationship with Almighty Qin is so good? You can even rummage through Almighty Qin's bag." Enchanting did not find Enchanting's papers, nor did she pay attention to the girl passing by. She turned to look at him. "Where's your paper?" Enchanting sat there without batting an eyelid. He raised his chin slightly towards the podium. Enchanting's sluggish brain seemed to have finally recovered her memories. Yes, he seemed to have placed the test paper on the podium first. She was still holding his bag and placing it on her lap. Seeing that he could not borrow their papers, How Xiuxia hurriedly went to the side to borrow them from others. Zhao Xiaoqing sat in the back and looked at Enchanting, then at Enchanting. She chuckled and lowered her head to send Enchanting a message, "Almighty Qin actually let you search his bag. He's not angry. Nian Nian, how did you do it? Isn't that too awesome?" Enchanting felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. She quickly placed her bag back on his side and took out her phone to take a look. Her heart skipped a beat. She was just used to sitting by Enchanting's side and being ignored by him. Usually, she adhered to the principle of doing everything herself. If she could not disturb him, she would not disturb him. For example, when she handed out the papers and took the books, she was used to reaching out to take them herself. In any case, he would not even reach out his hand. He probably wouldn't mind borrowing papers, so he didn't think too much about it just now. But now that he thought about it, it did seem a little too intimate. The key was that Enchanting remained calm and did not refuse. I've been desk mates with Hao Xiuxia for almost 3 years, but he never let me casually flip through his bag. Zhao Xiaoqing sent her another message. Shi Nianzhi didn't know how to reply. At this moment, Teacher Zhao came in. She quickly put her phone away, but for some reason, an unconcealable smile appeared on her lips. In the following days, Enchanting clearly repulsed her from the beginning to gradually get used to having such a person sitting by his side. Even though he still wouldn't take the initiative to say or do anything to her, and his attitude was still indifferent, at the very least, he would occasionally communicate normally. Sometimes, when Shi Nianzhi asked him some questions, he would answer her with a few words. His answers would not be particularly few, and gradually, he would answer more. Even if he said one more word than yesterday, Shi Nianzhi would be happy for the entire day. She had never thought that her thoughts would be completely occupied by one person every day. At Shi Nianzhi's age, she usually didn't have much to worry about. Other than her parents wanting her to study finance and medicine, there didn't seem to be anything that worried her too much in life. Using her parents was only a suggestion. They didn't force her to make a choice, so she didn't have anything to be unhappy about. Right now, her heart was filled with Enchanting every day. As long as he turned to look at her while she was speaking, she would be especially happy. It was almost the middle school entrance exam. Recently, the third-year students had entered the state of studying until 9:30 a.m. every day. Everyone's faces were much more haggard than 2 months ago because they were too focused on the exam and revision. Recently, because her parents had returned to China, she had to be brought back to the Shi family by Uncle Qin every day. At night, she had to accompany her parents to chat and do her homework. She could only sleep after 11:30 a.m., but her sleep quality had always been good. When she woke up in the morning, she was in a good state. Furthermore, there was a top student sitting beside her. Right now, Enchanting would answer most of her questions about her studies. Her grades had improved by leaps and bounds. She couldn't be ranked at the top of the school year, but she definitely wouldn't be at the bottom. She placed the thermos cup she brought in the morning on Enchanting's table. This is the fruit tea Auntie made. I left it in the fridge last night. It's cold and especially delicious. Try it. Enchanting glanced at her and looked away. He did not drink it. It's not the very sweet kind. It's just a very pure fruit tea. Everyone has tasted the milk tea powder I brought to our class last month. You've tasted it too. You definitely know my auntie's skills. Shi Nianzhi opened the lid and handed it to him. Try it. It's cold and refreshing. Enchanting glanced at the lid in front of him and took a sip. Shi Nianzhi smiled and closed the lid. I thought you'd like it, so I specially brought it. I saw that you don't usually drink coffee or milk tea, nor do you eat meat. You're more accepting of fruits and vegetables, so you'll definitely like this fruit tea. After drinking, Enchanting made a light sound and did not say anything. Shi Nianzhi was used to it. After a while, she said, "It's going to be the midterm exam soon. I haven't finished my second-year courses. I still don't know half of the third-year courses. I might have more questions in the next few days. Do you think I'm too talkative?" Enchanting did not reply. Although he had replied quite a few times now, he did not reply every time. Speaking of this, Shi Nianzhi was still quite depressed because she had yet to obtain Enchanting's phone number. That time when they ate on the street, it was only because of a coincidence that it became the only time. Later on, even if she wanted to meet him in the school cafeteria, she did not have the chance. Chapter 1460. Before the midterm exam, Nianj had endured for many days like everyone else. When the results came out, it could be seen that she had worked very hard. Previously, when she was in the second year of high school, her grades were only above average. When she was in the third year of high school, she could understand a portion of the curriculum and work hard to revise. In the end, she could obtain more than 100 points in the midterm exams. The teacher was already very satisfied with her current results and encouraged her to continue working hard. She wanted to take advantage of the remaining time to continue to take more remedial lessons and complete all the courses in the second and third years. This way, if her ranking could continue to rise during the final exam, the teacher would definitely not let her grandfather down. Without a doubt, Qin Siding's results were still first in the school year. It was said that he had been first in the school year for a long time. No one could shake this first place. According to Nianj's observation of him, she found that although he would listen in class, he was not overly focused like other top students, nor was he the type of person who lowered his head to focus on learning. He seemed to be blessed by nature and had an absolute ability to absorb all kinds of knowledge. In addition, he was also very serious. Unlike other rich kids who dawdled around every day, his life was bright, clean, and had an accurate direction. Gradually, he seemed to have become her wind vane in school every day. Then, look. The total score is 185 points lower than yours. Last month, when you lent me your notes to copy, I said that if I can reach the passing mark and exceed the estimated score by at least 50 points, you should give me your phone number. Look, I've exceeded quite a bit. You're right. Qin Siding nodded. You're right. You're right. Qin Siding did not answer. Although she was the one who suggested it and he did not speak or agree, he did not reject it. Nianj had no choice but to compromise. How about this? During the final exam, if my results are more than 30 points higher than now, you'll give me your phone number. Qin Siding did not look at her, as though he did not hear her. Nianj did not want to be discouraged, but she still felt a little hurt. He clearly did not reject her at that time. It was just a phone number. It wasn't like she would disturb him. After the exam, it happened to be a rare 2-day weekend. Recently, the school had been too tight. They could only rest for half a day on Sundays. It was rare for them to have 2 days of vacation. Zhao Xiaoqing asked Nianj out to shop. She was wearing a beautiful floral dress and held her arm as they walked. Didn't you do well in the exam this time? The teacher already said that you, a student who skipped a grade, was ranked in the top 300 of the school year. You've left all the students at the bottom of our class behind. Why are you still so listless? Who provoked you? Nianj forced a smile. No, it's probably because in my current situation, I can only shake off the last few with this bit of ability. However, the hundreds of people in front of me still need to continue looking up to me. It's really too difficult to catch up. Thinking about it, I feel that what adults usually complain about is very reasonable. What is it? Students are the most tiring. When you grow up, you'll only feel tired because of the endless responsibilities and the burden of life. But when you're a student, you'll feel tired because of the combination of mental and physical strength. You'll have endless homework, endless revision, and endless grades. Tisk, haven't you always been extroverted? Why are you suddenly depressed? Zhao Xiaoqing smiled. Did you break up again? The so-called breakup in Zhao Xiaoqing's mouth was already Nianj's normal state. For example, if Qin Siding ignored her one day, or if she said something about being ignored by Qin Siding, or if Qin Siding went to the student cadre for a meeting and did not attend class, these could all be collectively referred to as Nianj's breakup stage. More or less. Nianj sighed. Zhao Shaoqing could not help but laugh. I think you should change your target. Many boys in our class like you. Shi Nianzhi did not say anything. She just lowered her head to look at her phone. The class monitor had just sent her a registration form to hand in on Monday. It was a temporary vacancy in the cram school. Coincidentally, she had filled it in. She picked up her phone and began to fill in the form. In fact, Shi Nianzhi's views and methods on many things were frank and open. However, when it came to Qin citing small and obscure love, she realized that she was actually quite cowardly. After filling in the form, the class monitor asked where she was. After filling in the form, the class monitor asked her where she was. She said that she was shopping with Zhao Shaoqing outside. The class monitor asked if they needed a man to help them carry their bags. Shi Nianzhi helplessly smiled and replied, no. The class monitor was very regretful and wished her a good time shopping. Only then did the message chat end. After shopping for several hours, she did not buy anything. After all, she usually wore her school uniform for a longer time. She did not lack daily clothes, so there was really nothing to buy. Seeing that Shi Nianzhi had been listless, Zhao Shaoqing invited her to the dessert shop to eat a chocolate donut before the two of them went home. During the rare 2-day break after the midterm exam, Shi Nianzhi's emotions could not come up. After shopping for a day, she returned home and stayed in seclusion. Occasionally, she would call her grandfather to report her academic results. Occasionally, she would look at some suitable learning materials that her grandfather had sent her. When she had nothing to do, she would look at the human skeleton in the study room and observe the position and composition of every bone. She did not feel sleepy even after counting them one by one. However, there seemed to be something pressing down on her heart. Her mind kept flashing with the image of Qin Citing's indifferent expression after seeing her results. She could only blame herself for not working hard enough. She dared to show off in front of him with her mediocre grades. It was already good that she did not get mocked by him. What encouragement could she hope for? He did not owe her anything, and there was indeed no need for him to encourage her. On Sunday night, Shi Nianzhi packed up her study materials and books. She had to return to school tomorrow. After showering, she lay on the bed and closed her eyes. Her mind was filled with Qin Citing. She raised her hand and knocked her head. She should find time to help out in her grandfather's laboratory for a few more days to distract herself. She then recalled that she had yet to show her results to her parents. A while ago, after her parents returned to China, they returned to America after staying at home for half a month. Right now, it was daytime in America. She got up and took a photo of the papers with her phone before sending it to her parents. A few minutes later, she went to warm a glass of milk for herself and was about to drink it when she heard a message from her phone on the bed in the bedroom. She thought that her parents had replied to her after seeing her results. She drank the milk carelessly. After a long while, she slowly returned to the bed. She lifted the blanket and prepared to lie down. She picked up her phone and casually swiped it open to take a look. In the next moment, Shi Nianzhi's expression fell into an unprecedented emptiness and blankness. She even forgot to breathe. When she returned to her senses, she took a deep breath and stared at the unfamiliar number and text message on the screen. She saw that there were only 3 cold words on it: Qin Citing. Chapter 1461. Shi Nianzhi stared at the 2 words, wishing that she could stare a hole through the phone screen. Her number was written on his notes when she made the suggestion before the midterm exam. She had only casually written a string of numbers, but she had indeed written it in front of him. He knew it was her number. However, how could she dare to think that Qin Citing would really save her phone number? He probably forgot about it after taking a glance at it. He didn't remember that she had written her number. Now it seemed that not only did he remember, but he might have also saved her number on his phone. Oh my God! She couldn't imagine. Who would be able to fall asleep? Nianj held her phone and looked at it for a long time before noticing that this message was sent 15 minutes ago. 15 minutes before, it was already so late. After he sent her a message, she did not immediately reply. After so long, he should be asleep. After all, he still had class tomorrow, Monday. Furthermore, regardless of whether she replied or not, he probably wouldn't wait for her to reply. He only sent her a message to tell her his number. But what if he was waiting? After all, whether it was out of politeness or something else, she should reply. She hesitated for a long time and typed a long paragraph on her phone, but in the end, she deleted it. In the end, she only replied, "All right, I'll remember it. See you at school tomorrow." After sending the message, she hugged her phone and did not let go. She could not bear to put it down, nor could she bear to sleep. However, she was still sleepy. Furthermore, she knew that regardless of whether he was asleep or awake, he would definitely not reply to this message. After all, after so long, she understood his temper. It was already a miracle that he could send a message with his number. She had to be content. She closed her eyes and thought about it. In the end, she fell asleep in a daze. When she opened her eyes the next day, she thought that she had a dream. She quickly picked up her phone and flipped through the message records. When she saw the 3 words Enchanting from that number, her heart instantly relaxed. It was true. Last night, she was so excited that she forgot to save it. She quickly remembered the string of numbers and saved his name. Enchanting's name was saved into her address book. When she went to school, she saw that her male god, who had arrived early, was already sitting there. Nianj walked over with a smile. After sitting by his side, she turned to look at him. The clean young man was only sitting there reading formulas during the morning self-study. He did not come to see her at all. It didn't matter if he didn't look at her. It didn't stop her from looking at him. She was now a little fangirl who had been treated to a meal by her idol and had his phone number. The midterm exams weren't as relaxing as she had imagined. Instead, the burden of studying became heavier. She was about to sprint for all kinds of mock exams, major and minor exams, and the final exam in 2 months. To put it simply, the 3rd year of high school wasn't suitable for dating at all. If you wanted to date, you didn't even have the time and energy to spare. At most, you could only hide your thoughts. Nianj also calmed down a lot after obtaining Enchanting's number. She never called or sent him a message. She still maintained the state of sitting by his side in class every day. After a few exams, it was finally the end of the term. After the final exam results were released, Nianj's score was 40 points higher than the midterm exam. Her ranking in the school year had also advanced by about 20 places. Although she was still ranked at the bottom, at least she had improved. She did not have the ability to be a top student. In addition, because she had skipped a grade, the teacher was still satisfied with her results. He even took some time out to ask her to go to the office and help her explain all the questions she had done wrong. This was to prevent her from encountering such a difficult problem in the next exam. Nianj was also serious in her studies. Although she had been a little tired these few months, her ability to accept was considered strong. Even now, she did not feel any psychological pressure. It was almost winter break and the spring festival. The holidays for the 3rd year of high school wouldn't be too long. After the final exam, they still had to study in school for about a month. They would only be able to officially take a break when the new year was approaching, but the break was only about 20 days. It wasn't easy for her to finally be able to take a break. There were only 4 to 5 days left before the spring festival. Niange's birthday was in February of the Gregorian calendar, the first month of the lunar calendar. It happened to be her birthday during the holiday. The day before the holiday, Xiao Xiaoqin gave her a beautiful and exquisite crystal box, saying that it was a gift for her to come of age in advance. That's right. After this birthday, she would be 18 years old. Hao Xiuxia was a fat, straight man. He didn't know what to give her. After asking around, he heard that girls were all foodies, so he prepared a gift box for her. Niange held the box and looked at the pile of puffy food inside. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she still accepted it. After school, she specially carried it home. As it was almost the spring festival, her parents were on leave. It was rare for them to fly back to spend the new year together. Niange placed the gift in Lishui Villa and followed Uncle Qin back to the Shi family. The Shi family had many relatives, but because her parents had moved out to live alone very early and rarely visited their relatives, there were only the 3 of them during the spring festival. Chapter 1462. She stared at the string of numbers and the 3 words. She bit her lip and slowly slid her fingers back and forth on her phone. After thinking about it for more than 10 minutes, her remaining rationality forced her to retract her fingers. However, when she placed her phone back under her pillow and closed her eyes, she saw the string of numbers on her phone. She felt that she should do something, but what should she do? Even if she really sent a text message, what should she send? After dawdling for a long time, Niange took out her phone again. She stared at the number on the screen and sent 3 words, Qin sighting. After sending it, she raised her head to look at the time displayed on the screen. It was already 10:30 p.m. It was winter vacation now. Unlike usual, everyone slept very late. According to a normal and healthy schedule, he must have already fallen asleep. However, she had already sent it. Even if he wasn't asleep, he probably wouldn't reply to her. However, she felt very satisfied after sending it. She placed her phone back on the bedside table and took a deep breath. All right, let's sleep. However, before she could fall asleep, her phone vibrated on the bedside table. Niange opened her eyes in a daze and looked at the phone above. When she saw that the screen had also lit up, her heart skipped a beat. Could it be, at this time? Would Qin sighting reply to her? She abruptly sat up from the bed and quickly took her phone back. When she opened the screen, she felt as though her heart was about to jump out of her throat. She looked down and saw that it was really Qin sighting. He really replied. Qin sighting, ? A question mark. Although there were very few words, and it could be said that there was not even a word, only a punctuation mark, it was enough to shock Niange. A question mark. A question mark sent by Qin sighting. Such a concise question mark definitely proved that it was really him. But since it was a question mark, it meant that she could continue replying. I'm not sleeping anymore. Niange pressed her phone against her heart for a while before quickly sitting upright on the bed. She held her phone and seriously looked at the question mark on it. She then began to carefully consider how she should reply. Then she slowly poked the screen with her finger word by word. Did I disturb your rest? She then carefully clicked send. Her phone soon vibrated again. He actually replied very quickly. No. I didn't disturb him. Then he shouldn't be reading or busy right now. Perhaps he was lying on the bed like her and hadn't fallen asleep yet. Rounding it up, it was equivalent to Almighty Qin lying down and chatting with her. She held her phone with one hand and quickly covered herself with the blanket with the other. She held her phone and muttered softly, calm down, calm down. I have to be calm. If this continues, I won't be able to continue chatting. What should she say now? Holding her phone, her face was full of sweetness but also a little distressed. Then, she bit her lip and replied, "The weather in High City has been quite cold recently. Do you go out often during the holidays? Be careful of the cold. School will start in a week. Be careful not to catch a cold." She could not hesitate anymore. If she continued to dawdle like this, Enchanting might fall asleep. However, after sending it over, she looked at the content and regretted it. What did she post? What cold protection? What cold? She instantly covered her face and burrowed into the quilt, hugging her phone. She couldn't tell if she was upset or something, but there was a hint of sweetness in her heart. Her phone vibrated again. She lowered her head to take a look. It was another simple and cold word, N. She paused for a moment and glanced at the time. There was less than an hour and a half left until the end of the day. But in this hour and a half, he could fall asleep at any time. Looking at the words that he had restored, there were only 3 words and 3 punctuation marks in total. However, Enchanting felt that these words were extremely beautiful. Looking at Enchanting's words displayed on the screen, she felt that they were extremely warm and gentle. She was also afraid that if she continued speaking, Enchanting would find it annoying. She was afraid that if she chatted with him in the middle of the night, not only would she disturb his rest, but he would also feel that she was too long-winded. After all, in his eyes, they were only desk mates. He could only reply to her because they were desk mates. It was still a holiday and they couldn't see each other usually. It was really not good for her to send him a message in the middle of the night without a reason. But what else could she say? Just say good night and I'll sleep. Then her goal of sending him a message tonight would not be achieved. She just wanted to wish him a happy birthday. What should she send? Should she say, "Almighty Chin, today is my birthday. Can you say happy birthday to me?" She felt a little stupid. Or should she say, "Dear deskmate, I'm 18 years old today." She felt even stupider. How could she let him know that it was her birthday today and take the initiative to say happy birthday? She turned back to look at her room. There was still a cake that a relative had sent over in the morning that she had not eaten and had forgotten to take down. She then looked at the crystal calendar by the side. Enchanting's eyes moved. She lifted the blanket and ran to the cake. She opened the cake box and moved the calendar on the table close to the cake. After thinking for a moment, she found her student ID and placed it by the side. Her date of birth was written on the student ID. After placing them together, she felt satisfied and used her phone to take a photo and send it to him. After sending it, she quickly sent a cute smiley face to him. Silence was better than words. He would understand, right? After sending this photo and the smiling face, the message was like a stone sinking into the sea. She did not receive a reply for a long time. Was he asleep? It was almost 11 o'clock. She had just come over to prepare the cake, the calendar, and her student ID. She had also taken a few photos to find a good and clear angle. It had been so long. He should be asleep. The sweetness in Enchanting's heart that was about to float instantly fell. However, when she thought about it carefully, to be able to receive a message from Enchanting on her birthday, and there were 3 of them, this could be considered a birthday gift to her. With this thought, she felt happy again. She took the cake out and asked Auntie Xiang to put it in the refrigerator. She then closed the door and returned to bed. This time, she covered herself with the blanket, but she could not fall asleep. She had been wondering if he had seen her text message. Could it be that the photo had failed to be sent? He didn't see it. After thinking for a long time, she was afraid that he had really fallen asleep and did not dare to disturb him. After a few minutes, the phone in her hand vibrated again. She immediately picked it up and quickly swiped the screen. Chapter 1463. Enchanting, I just went to take a shower. Then, in less than 2 seconds, another message came in, Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Oh. Nianj hugged her phone and rolled on the bed several times, unable to calm the joy in her heart. She looked at the 2 messages on the screen and childishly checked the words on the message. 10 words. There were 10 words on these 2 messages. He even wished her a happy birthday. Her life seemed to be complete at this moment. She resisted the urge to send him a string of She even added a hee before good night. It was mainly because she really could not express the joy in her heart. He should know that she was happy, right? This time, after sending it again, she thought that he would not reply, but he actually replied very quickly, good night. This time, she really couldn't sleep. Nianj placed her phone aside and remembered to charge it. She then lay back on the bed and opened her eyes to look at the ceiling and the beautiful chandelier above. Her mind kept thinking about how he would reply to her message. Was he going to take a shower? He replied to her before taking a shower, and then he replied to her after taking a shower. Was he wearing any clothes? Wait a minute, what was she thinking? Nianj raised her hand to hold her flushed face. She leaned against the pillow and took a long time to calm down. It was as though she was soaking in a honey pot. Although her phone was charging, Nianj still held it in her arms all night. In the middle of the night, she felt that her phone was a little warm from the charging. She put it back, turned over, and continued sleeping. She even had a dream. She dreamed that Enchanting came out of the bathroom with only a white towel wrapped around his lower body. He picked up his phone and saw her photo. Then, his beautiful lips curled up slightly as he sent her 2 words, Happy birthday. How could it be such a beautiful dream? Even though she knew it was a dream, she didn't want to wake up. In the dream, she carefully observed the handsome boy and looked at his back. When he put down his phone and turned around, she was so scared that she quickly covered her eyes. However, at this moment, the dream mirror was shaken up by the noisy alarm. She suddenly opened her eyes, raised her hand, and pressed the alarm on her phone. She wanted to continue the dream, at least to finish the dream, but it was useless no matter how she closed her eyes. Nianj helplessly opened her eyes and picked up her phone to check the time. It was already past 6 in the morning. Every year, the day after her birthday, she would visit several relatives with her parents. Because it was still the first month of the spring festival, these days of visiting relatives would probably continue for another 2 or 3 days. 2 of his aunts lived far away in the neighboring province. Because it was a neighboring province, there was no need to fly there, so they had to get up early to drive there. She was about to put the phone back when she suddenly remembered what happened last night. She took it back and carefully opened the message page. She saw the messages from yesterday again. His words and hers were all inside, lined up as though they were chatting continuously. During the day, when she followed her parents to the neighboring province, Nianj would occasionally take out her phone to look at the chat records. She was even afraid that her hand would slip and accidentally delete the records, so after looking at them for a while, she carefully turned them off to prevent them from being deleted. For the next few days, any unhappy things seemed to have disappeared. As long as she took a look at the message records, she would immediately be happy. School would start in a few days. She really missed the days when she could sit by Enchanting's side every day. 2 days before school started, her parents had to return to the company to start their busy schedule. This time, they were not flying to America but to the branch office in Singapore for 2 months. After that, they would continue to go to America. In short, she might not be able to find time to return before the college entrance examination. At night, as Shirnianj packed her school bag for school the day after tomorrow, she thought about how she was about to see Chin sighting again. There was a smile on her lips, completely unaffected by her parents' departure from the country. Even though he knew that because they rarely accompanied her, she was already used to the situation that they weren't in the country, and her parents going abroad wouldn't touch her switch of joy, anger, and sadness, he had never seen her so happy before school started. She had a smile on her face the whole night, even when she was eating. "What have you been smiling about all night?" Shirnianj's adorable old mother, Madame Yangjinjin, could not hold it in any longer. No matter how much she did not accompany her daughter, she still wanted to care about her current life and study before she left. Seeing her mother push open the door and enter her bedroom, the smile on Shirnianj's lips did not fade. "It's nothing. It's just that school is about to start. I'm in a good mood when I think about meeting my good friends and classmates." However, Madame Yangjinjin raised her brows and looked at her. She asked with a sensitive expression, "You've always had a good relationship with your former classmates. I've never seen you so happy when school started. Furthermore, this is the 3rd year of high school. Didn't you shout that you were pulled from heaven to hell overnight? Why are you so happy?" Shirnianj thought for a moment. "Maybe it's because I've grown up. I feel that I can save a year of study time compared to others. It's like stealing a year. I'm a little happy. Enough of you." Madame Yangjinjin sat by her bed and pressed her unpacked school bag down. She then glanced at the phone she had placed by the bed. "Recently, I've seen you hugging your phone and laughing foolishly every day. There are no calls or messages, and your phone is silent. You can stare at the screen and be happy for a long time. Tell me, are you in love? Your father and I have never objected to what you should do at a certain age. Previously, when Tang Xiao chased after you, didn't we not object? We just told you to protect yourself. You've already grown up. You can decide for yourself. What else do you have to hide? It's not love." "Not?" Shirnianj realized that she could always be very calm about Tang Xiao's matter. Just as her parents had said, at which age would something happen? 18 years old was not considered puppy love, but after all, they were still students, so some feelings could only be buried under the surface. Many of her peers would not be too embarrassed to share them with others. However, in front of her parents, she never had to hide these things. But towards Chin sighting, she suddenly realized. She actually felt a sense of shyness. She didn't know how to describe it. She felt that even if she mentioned Chin sighting's name in front of her mother, her heart would beat faster. Chapter 1464. Seeing that her mother wanted to know so much, Shirnianj said directly, "I like someone very, very much, but I don't think he has any intention of getting a girlfriend. Besides, his personality isn't that approachable. I just feel that sitting by his side in class is very motivating." Mrs. Yangjinjin raised her brows. "Oh, a crush. You really have to experience all the things you should experience in your adolescence. You won't miss a single one." The corner of Shirnianj's mouth twitched. "It can't be said to be a crush." Yang Jinjin took the opportunity to laugh at her. "All right, I'll still say the same thing. Whether it's feelings or interpersonal relationships, it's fine as long as you know your limits. Dad and Mom won't interfere with your freedom. Protect yourself. Don't cross the line that you shouldn't cross. We won't interfere with other matters." Shirnianj picked up the new notebook and placed it in her bag. She then raised her eyelids to look at her. Then don't interfere with whether I want to apply for the finance or medicine department, okay? Her mother looked at her for a while and sighed. Before we came back, your father and I had a deep discussion about this matter. You weren't by our side since you were young. We can give you too little. Our child has grown up healthy. We really shouldn't force you to do anything. You decide for yourself. Nianj nodded. Hearing this, the only boulder in her heart was relieved. The following last day of vacation was really longer than the previous 20 days. She was so bored that she followed her parents to Shida Group's company for a walk. The top floor of Shida Group was basically not accessible, but she could enter. The top floor was an office area, but there were some leisure and entertainment places on the rooftop. There were bowling and swimming. She stayed inside for an entire day and looked at the time in boredom. She wished that time could jump to tomorrow morning. School would start tomorrow. Tomorrow. In the morning. She would be able to see Qin sighting. Nianj woke up an hour earlier than usual. Although she still had to wear her school uniform, she still specially got up to look for Auntie Xiang to bring out the ironing machine. She ironed the clean school uniform in her room and put it on. She looked at Auntie Xiang and said, "Auntie Xiang, I'm sorry." When it was finally time to go out, she went downstairs to take 2 pieces of bread and left. Seeing her anxious look, her parents didn't ask anything and just let her go. After getting into Uncle Qin's car, she took a look at the time. Uncle Qin smiled when he saw her like this. As he started the engine, he said, "Girls nowadays seem to have stars in their eyes when they're in love." In what way was she in love? She just liked him and worshipped him for no reason, okay? It was probably the kind of worship that poor students had for the top students. But was it that obvious? Forget it. It didn't matter if it was obvious or not. What was important was that she could see Qin sighting today. Perhaps it was because she was looking forward to it too much that she had been worried along the way that Qin sighting would not go to school on time today. Would he have something to do or something? Although he was in his 3rd year of high school, he would not take leave unless there was something important. Even many competitions had been postponed. After all, studying for the college entrance examination was more important. She worried the entire way. When she arrived at the school gate, she looked left and right when she got out of the car. She even glanced in the direction where she had met Qin sighting previously, but she did not see him. With all kinds of worries in her heart, she entered the school gate and entered the classroom. As soon as she entered the classroom, she lowered her head to check her uniform. Suddenly, she saw a white figure in front of her and almost bumped into him. She raised her head abruptly and saw the person in front of her. Time seemed to have returned to the scene on the field at the beginning of the previous semester. The clean and good-looking young man in a white shirt stood in front of her. He glanced at her indifferently because she had lowered her head and almost bumped into him. The moment she met Qin sighting's gaze, her expression changed from confusion to joy. Then, her heart that had been floating seemed to instantly fall to the ground. He had actually arrived earlier than her. When she saw his clothes, she turned to look at the others around her. "Why aren't you wearing your school uniform?" Today was the first day of school. He should be wearing his school uniform. Qin sighting was as calm as before. His gaze swept past her face, and his voice was as clear as a cold spring. "I caught an early flight from Japan and arrived at school half an hour ago. I didn't go back to get my school uniform." Ah. He went to Japan. He wasn't in the country these days. Then on her birthday, did he reply to her message in Japan? Then what about your school uniform? She paused for a moment and found a topic that would allow her to talk normally and restore her inner reason and calm. "Someone will send it over. It's almost here. I'm about to go get it." Qin Siding glanced at the time and then at her. You're very early. Shi Nianj had been worried that he would not come today. She was so worried that her palms were sweating, but on the surface, she looked calm and in a good mood. That's right. It's the first day of school. Even if you're a bad student, you have to show the attitude of a third-year student and be more positive. Besides, the early bird gets meat. Qin Siding raised his brows coldly. What meat? What meat? Of course it's you, this fat piece of meat. Shi Nianj smiled but did not speak. She smiled at him and went to her seat to sit down. When she saw Qin Siding's bag by the side, the stone in her heart finally landed. Previously, she was worried that the teacher would change everyone's seats in the new semester. She was worried that Qin Siding would take this opportunity to sit in another seat or ask the teacher to change her seat. However, judging from his attitude earlier and his backpack, he didn't have such plans. When Zhao Xiaoqing and the others entered the class, it was almost 7 o'clock. Everyone had not seen each other for a long time, and they had endless topics to talk about. They could discuss which boy's new hairstyle and which girl's new bangs were cut for a long time. Shi Nianj did not participate in any of the topics. She only sat in her seat and placed the books neatly on the table. She then glanced at Qin Siding's bag and thought for a moment. She did not rashly search through his bag again. She only tidied up the scattered books and papers on his table. Looking at his handwriting, she felt that a good-looking boy's writing would definitely be very good-looking. This sentence was the truth. When Qin Siding returned with his school uniform, he saw the neatly arranged books and papers on the table. He then glanced at the books on her table that were arranged at the same angle. Almighty Qin, happy new school. Shi Nianj turned to him and smiled brightly. Chapter 1465. Seeing Qin Siding sit down, Shi Nianj turned to look at him and used her eyes to describe his handsome and beautiful outline. She said, in the new semester, the teacher will rearrange the seats, right? I don't really want to change seats. Can the two of us not change? Qin Siding raised his brows slightly and turned to look at her. Shi Nianj smiled at him. Can I not change seats? He did not answer, but his gaze, which seemed to have seen through her, made her feel a little ashamed. However, she did not want to retreat. Her heart was already burning, but she remained calm on the surface. Regarding the change of seats, it was true. She had heard from Hao Xiuxia that their class would change seats every semester. However, Qin Siding had always been sitting here. Even if he changed seats, he was still alone. Firstly, he did not like to sit with others. Secondly, no one dared to come close to him and be frozen by an iceberg all day. Even if the teacher requested to change seats, he might not be able to. Early in the morning, she went from worry to relief to joy, and then to worry again. When the form teacher, Teacher Zhao, entered the class to call the roll, he simply asked everyone about the situation during the winter vacation and asked if they had any thoughts about changing seats. Almost half of the students said that they could change seats. Whether it was men and women sitting together or friends sitting together, the teacher's idea was that those who were too close should not be together. Otherwise, it would be easy for them to chat with each other in class and affect the progress of their studies. Under the teacher's arrangements, everyone was changing seats one by one. Almost everyone was walking around the other desks with their bags and books. Shi Nianj sat there motionless and did not say a word. Qin Siding did not seem to be affected at all. Everyone else was walking around. He closed his eyes and sat quietly, pretending to sleep to pass the boring time. When Teacher Zhao realized that there was no movement from their side, he asked from the podium, Shi Nianj, Qin Siding, aren't the two of you going to change seats? In fact, Teacher Zhao was very surprised that Shi Nianj could actually sit by Qin Sighting's side for a week. Now that there was a chance to change seats, with Qin Sighting's temper, he would definitely get up and find another seat to sit down. This way, it would not be good for Shi Nianj to sit down again. However, neither of them stood up. Shi Nianj wanted to openly say that she didn't want to change, but the teacher was looking at Qin Sighting, so it wasn't convenient for her to speak. She only smiled at the teacher and brushed it off. "Nian Nian, aren't you going to trade?" The class monitor happened to come over from the front. He turned back to look in Shi Nianj's direction and pointed to the seat next to him with his eyes, indicating that she could sit next to him. Shi Nianj shook her head. The class monitor seemed a little surprised. After all, although she had sat at Qin Sighting's place for a week, she had very little interaction with Qin Sighting. The atmosphere between them was still very cold. With Shi Nianj's cheerful and lively personality, she shouldn't be very happy in such a cold atmosphere. She actually didn't plan to escape from that iceberg. "I can sit here. I ranked 7th in the previous mock exam. That's not bad. I can also help you with your studies and tutor you." The class monitor placed his bag on the seat by the side, indicating that he didn't want anyone else to sit. His eyes were still looking in Shi Nianj's direction, clearly insisting that she go over. The class monitor was a tall and handsome boy with glasses. He had a buzz cut and always seemed to carry the heroic spirit of a student leader. Shi Nianj had not interacted much with him. It seemed like she had only brought Hao Xiuxia to the infirmary and the hospital with him when she had a stomachache. Later on, they only interacted with each other in terms of their studies and did not contact each other in private. Seeing that the class monitor seemed to want her to go over, Shi Nianj did not want to go. However, Qin Sighting's completely cold attitude made her feel a little embarrassed. Teacher Zhao was still watching from the side. He signaled her with his eyes, clearly asking her to go to the class monitor's side. After all, Shi Nianj's grandfather had told him that he hoped that after Shi Nianj was promoted to the 3rd year of high school, someone would help her when she faced the pressure of her studies. Last semester, Teacher Zhao had told her to go to another seat, but this child's temper was really stubborn. It had been an entire semester and she still hadn't changed. Now, she actually didn't plan to change. Seeing that Shi Nianj was still sitting there firmly, Teacher Zhao looked at Qin Sighting, who had been sitting there quietly with his eyes closed. "Student Qin, do you and Shi Nianj plan to stay in your original position or change seats?" Everyone was busy moving their books and things. Only a small number of people noticed the situation here, but they only took a glance and then went to chat happily with their new desk mates. The class was noisy, and Shi Nianj's heart was also noisy. The class monitor walked over and was about to move Shi Nianj's book over. Shi Nianj saw that the teacher and the class monitor were planning to move her away from Qin Sighting. For a moment, she could not help but suspect if Qin Sighting had privately requested it from the teacher. In fact, Qin Sighting did not want to sit together anymore. Her heart was in a mess. She subconsciously reached under the table and gently tugged on the sleeve of the person beside her. Qin Sighting opened his eyes and turned to look at her. Shi Nianj also turned to look at him. "Nian Nian, give me your bag. I'll bring it over for you." The class monitor had just picked up a few of her books when he glanced at her bag on the seat and reached over. Before his hand could touch her bag, Qin Sighting's gaze finally turned to him. He coldly glanced at the class monitor. "She's not changing." Teacher Zhao was still thinking about how to help Shi Nianj improve the learning atmosphere in the last semester of high school. The class monitor she had arranged to go over was indeed pulling her. However, she never expected Qin Sighting to speak. The class monitor was also startled. His hand was still in midair and did not touch her bag. At this moment, Nianj quickly placed her school bag on the other side where his hand could not touch it. She subconsciously moved her body closer to Qin Sighting's side. Although her movements were very subtle, Teacher Zhao, who was standing on the podium, saw it clearly. His eyelids twitched, and at the same time, he saw that Qin Sighting did not seem to be disgusted. He understood. These young children nowadays. The Qin family and the Shi family could not afford to offend anyone. However, it was rare for Qin Sighting to accept someone by his side. Furthermore, he would not accept changing seats after a semester. Shi Nianj was so willing, so forget it. All right, Lin Su, go back to your seat. Teacher Zhao finally spoke. The class monitor responded and then looked thoughtfully at Qin Sighting's indifferent side profile. He then looked at Shi Nianj's focused expression and left helplessly. Chapter 1466. No words could express Shi Nianj's current feelings. This feeling filled her heart and remained there for several days. Qin Sighting was too good, in fact, under the circumstances where the teacher and the class monitor, Lin Su, clearly wanted to change her seat. If he really didn't like her sitting by his side, he could have remained silent. But he kept her. In the next few days, Shi Nianj maintained this slightly touched emotion in her heart. When she recalled that Qin Sighting had taken the books from the class monitor's hands and placed them on her desk, she felt full of energy. She had to study hard. She couldn't be left behind by the top student. For the next few days, when she slept, she would hold her phone and look at the screen, constantly calling Qin Sighting's name in her heart. Although he did not send her any more text messages, just these chat records were enough for her to savor for several days. It had been 3 or 4 days since school started. These 3 or 4 days were peaceful, as though the storm of changing seats had finally passed. Many of the students who had changed seats had officially entered the state of preparing for the college entrance examination. Hao Xiuxia and Zhao Shaoqin did not change seats either. The two of them seemed to have sat together in the first year of high school. Later, they changed seats and changed back last semester. This time, they did not change seats, and the teacher did not say anything. After all, they were both students in the last 2 rows. Her parents had already gone abroad again. Shi Nianj returned to Lishui Villa as usual. When Auntie Xiang and Uncle Qin sent her here, they prepared a lot of delicious food for her. The next morning, Shi Nianj brought the chocolates that Auntie Xiang had brought her to school. The chocolates were for Zhao Shaoqing and Hao Xiuxia. There was also a box of fruit that she had personally cut in the morning. She placed it in a fresh keeping box and planned to give it to Qin Sighting. She didn't know why she always liked to bring gifts or food for her good friends. In fact, they weren't expensive things, but she always felt that she couldn't finish them alone. It would be a pity to leave so many delicious food in Lishui Villa for more than 2 days. She might as well eat with her friends. She sat in the classroom for half an hour in the morning. As expected, Qin Sighting came to school at about the same time as usual. Seeing him unhurriedly enter from the door and sit by her side with his shoulder bag, Shi Nianj recalled what her parents had said to her before they went abroad. While they were young, everyone was still very simple. If they liked him, they could fight for it. Don't miss it, and don't leave any regrets for yourself. Thus, she looked at him with a pair of starry eyes. Qin Sighting also glanced at her. He was expressionless, but for some reason, Shi Nianj felt that he seemed to be in a good mood today. His expression was also relatively peaceful. Almighty Qin. Shi Nianj called her softly. Good morning. She thought that Qin Sighting would not respond, or that he would just give a faint and, like usual. Unexpectedly, he opened his mouth and calmly said, Good morning. Shi Nianj's heart melted at this moment. She quickly lowered her head and pretended to check last night's homework. Her heart was beating so fast that she could only think of a way to calm herself down. Enchanting greeted her good morning. He had said happy birthday and good morning. She was fine. Very good. Very good. Although they did not change seats, everyone had changed seats this time. Therefore, her and Enchanting seats were moved from the row by the window to the row by the other wall and door. Behind them was Hao Shusha's side, which was the back door of the class. It was also the position where the teacher often stood outside to launch a surprise attack. This new position had a good line of sight. At the very least, there was no need to draw the curtains to block the blinding sunlight. There was a high wall next to her. When she was tired, she could lean against it for a while. When she sat here, Enchanting took the initiative to ask to sit against the wall. Enchanting agreed. He only changed his left and right seats with her. Everything else remained the same. Enchanting was actually a little scheming. This was because every time she was about to go out after class, she could talk to Enchanting. For example, Almighty Chin, I'm going out for a while. I'm back. I'm going out to buy water. I'm going to get something from the teacher. As he was sitting outside, she had to tell him if she wanted to go out from her seat. This way, there would be more space for communication. Right now, he would more or less respond. Even if it was just a N. After another half a month, because Enchanting remembered the time Enchanting would arrive at school, she kept the time and waited outside the school gates. When she saw that he was indeed walking over from that path, she immediately walked quickly toward him. Good morning. Enchanting usually wore her school uniform in a well-behaved manner. In the entire third year of high school, Enchanting was the only girl with a particularly good family background. However, unlike other girls, she did not find opportunities to put on makeup and do her hair from time to time or wear all kinds of strange clothes during weekend tutoring. She wore her school uniform from Monday to Friday. She had 3 sets, and she washed and changed them back and forth. On weekends, she wore very ordinary clothes, and most of them were student clothes. She looked clean, and she never wore any luxuries that matched her family background. After so long, the only change in her body was that she had changed to a new phone, but it was not the especially expensive one. Instead, it was a white and delicate phone with comprehensive functions. Furthermore, she had specially thought of a way to keep the text messages between her and Enchanting. When she changed her phone, she struggled for a long time. Later, she asked Uncle Tai to go to the operator's side to help her think of a way. Only then did she successfully keep the text messages on her new phone. Enchanting glanced at her. Good morning. Another 3 words. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but if the time he treated her to a meal was considered perfunctory, now when he occasionally spoke to her and responded to her, he was quite serious and no longer perfunctory. Enchanting simply stood by his side and followed him in. She really liked the feeling of being able to enter the school gates with him until the end of the class. Furthermore, because he was sitting outside, he would stand there and wait for her to sit inside. This small interaction could make her happy for the entire day. When they entered the school gates, she stood by Enchanting's side. Seeing that he was already used to her following him and did not seem to reject it at all, she leaned behind him and whispered, I remember that the Chin family should be on the left. Why do you always come from the main road in the middle? Don't you usually come home to stay? You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.